All right, everybody, what's going on? Happy Thursday. Aaron likes to call it Friday's Eve. I tend to agree. We have halfway decent Thursday for you here. Not as cold as yesterday. Still going to be a little windy from time to time. In fact, like back at the White House, look at the flag, top of the White House. It is starting to get a little gusty out there. Temperatures won't go too much farther from where they are now if you happen to be watching from the D.C. region. If not, and then you watch from somewhere warmer, lucky you. If you're watching from somewhere colder, too bad for you. All right, here's what we got. I'll do a little weather here, and then Wisdom Martin's going to come over in just a couple of minutes, and we'll do our NFL picks like we do every Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, whatever day is available. And then we'll call it a day. And then tomorrow I'll discuss more long-term stuff. But I do want to, everybody's asking about Christmas, so I do want to update on Christmas a little bit. And I got bad news for the Christmas lovers out there, which is that odds are starting to really kind of decrease today that we're going to be dealing with any sort of a white Christmas around the region. Let's do the kind of what's going on outside right now. We had a Clipper move through last night. If you happen to live off to the north of town like I did, that's your Clipper system. It brought a little bit of snow to northern Maryland. I got a ½ inch in my front yard last night up in Howard County. Northern Baltimore had a few. They had several inches of snow in the mountains, kind of as expected. In D.C., a few flakes flew, but that was about it. First school delays and closings of the year that I have seen so far, up to the north and west of town in the mountains. But locally here, I think, let's see, Garrett and Allegheny counties closed today due to the snow from last night. But other than that, not too much is going on. Oh, you ready already? Oh, you're the man.
I don't have time to be playing around.
No time to play around? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. All right, we'll come back to the weather in just a minute.
Yeah, you come back to the important stuff.
Right. Important stuff. It doesn't get any more important than this, Wiz. Sheets is better than Wawa. It is. Sheets has more fried food than hot food.
I don't know anything. I don't know.
When I was down in Virginia,
Sheets was the thing. I mean, and Ocean City has Sheets all over the place. So, okay. Well, I'm happy you're happy, Chris. Weigh in, Sheets or Wawa, everybody that's watching. All right, you got your mic? Let me pump you up.
My mic sounds nice. Check one.
Check one, check one.
My mic sounds nice. Check two.
Well,
all right, let's get it on.
Let's get it on. All right, first some stats.
Okay.
Last week
you won last week.
Last week I did win.
Yep.
Thank you for acknowledging it. Boy, I can't wait for Chick-fil-A. It tastes good.
Whatever.
All right. Not a good week for either one of us. I went 8-8. You went 7-9.
Okay. One game separated us.
All right. I have the stats.
Okay.
So as of today.
Okay.
For the past 5 weeks we've done this. I'm 49-28.
Okay. You're 49-28. Oh, I see it right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And what am I?
You going in. Okay, so we were one game.
That's a pretty good record, actually.
That's not bad. We were one game separated going into this week, and you would have caught me if you had won the week. But you're 47-30.
I think you know what I think this means? There's a lot of bad NFL teams.
We gotta start gambling.
No. We're not going to gamble. No.
But if you look at it, and we started putting money on these games, we'd win 47 out of 30 times.
Look, first of all, I'm having a hard enough time buying you a Chick-fil-A combo. And you're talking about some real gambling?
That's what I'm saying. We got to gamble so that you can afford the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Spinning forward.
Moving on. Let's get to it. Let's get to the good stuff. All right, first I want to get a shout out.
Okay.
Best game of the week last
this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
Awesome.
Look, here's the thing. I understand football.
Do you think they should play in these
No,
conditions?
absolutely not. Football's an outdoor sport, and according to NFL rules, they're supposed to call the game when the referee has to make the decision to call the game when they can't see. How could you? Just like in that game back in that. You
can't even see the crowd there.
Right. Just like in that game when Chicago beat Philly, that one time when Randall Cunningham was a quarterback at the Fog Bowl.
Yeah.
You couldn't see anything. The broadcasters couldn't even see. But they went ahead and played that game. Philly was a heavy favorite, but they lost that game because they couldn't see.
Right.
They couldn't see, and this is the same kind of thing. When you can't see, you should not be playing football.
I sort of agree because you're taking it's all running back.
Yeah.
You're taking half the skill away.
Right. And the play calling and everything, and then the refs can't see. I mean, it's a mess. I understand people paid their money, but come on, really?
Well, I'm surprised anybody went, honestly, because would you go to a game and probably not.
Mike, I wouldn't go to a game if it was 60 degrees outside and dry.
They're a special breed up in Buffalo. That takes some guts.
That's true. So. All right. But that
By the
was-
way, also, and I kind of thought this during the game. I think they're cheating being in red because if I'm
Right.
if I'm Indianapolis and
Yeah.
I'm in white and I'm running down the field for a pass,
Right.
I'm losing you. But if I'm in that bright red,
Yeah.
I can still see.
Right. What you can see, you can't see the red. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Indianapolis isn't struggling enough as it is.
Right. Right.
So,
But I
anyway.
did have a lot of fun watching that game.
All right.
So,
All right.
All right. Moving on.
Moving on to the professional football league. Yeah. All right. Okay. We get.
Copyright.
Yeah.
Although
gotcha.
here's what I discovered,
Okay.
Wiz, and you'll notice this in this
Right.
week's little theme.
Yes.
Is that you can get around copyright in some ways.
But
and
do we really want to do that?
I do.
Okay,
I like
all right.
pushing. I like pushing the envelope.
All right. Okay.
So if I'm allowed to show tweets here, so if I show tweets
Yeah.
with images of matchups,
Gotcha.
it's totally legal.
All right. Okay. So
I
what you got?
went to Twitter and we actually have some real football photos.
Wow. You are a
I'm
genius.
trying to be.
You are a genius. You're amazing. Anyway.
Let's see.
All right.
Again, I'm desperate. We got 2 weeks left after
Right,
this.
right,
I gotta try and keep it together. And then playoffs, but
Okay. Playoffs.
playoffs.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Game 1, Broncos at Colts. The struggling Colts, as you just
It's indoors in Indianapolis.
Uh-huh.
Both teams stink.
Uh-huh.
Colts are coming close on a couple of games. I'm going to go with the Colts just to make things interesting.
Yeah, I kind of same reasoning.
Oh,
as you.
okay.
I'll take the home team when it's two bad teams.
Right.
I'll take the home team every
Okay.
time. So
All right.
Colts it is.
Okay.
All right, next game: Bears and Lions.
Bears and Lions in Detroit.
Little rivalry matchup.
A little rivalry matchup. I think the Lions are a better team. I'm going to go with the Lions.
I will not waste your time, sir,
Yeah.
and I will just agree.
Okay.
Lions are the better team of the two. Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to show it.
Right. Okay.
All right, game
No.
number 3.
This is an interesting game because the Chargers are hot right now, and the
Uh-huh.
Chiefs, they got off the struggle bus last week. But I'm not a big believer in Alex Smith. I'm also not a big believer in Phillip Rivers. But I'm going to go with the home team on this one, Kansas City.
Same thing. Chargers have a great defense, but I think the Chiefs, they need to get on the roll
Right.
if they want to make the
Right.
playoffs. And I think since they're at home, they'll probably do it. All right, so
Right.
we're 3 for 3, sir.
Okay.
Oh, that's the morning meme from tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Don't-
Well, you just gave it away. Don't-
Ignore that one.
Yeah, people, you didn't. You're on the internet. You didn't see that. You didn't see that.
that.
Act like you didn't see that. All right, hurt Mike. Get it down so they can't see it. Get it down. Come on, man. Come on, man. Get it off of there.
It kind of froze.
Oh my
on me.
gosh.
All right, we're having technical difficulties.
All right. Wow. Okay. All right. Next game.
That was the one I wanted to pull up.
Right. Okay. All right. Here we go.
So if you're watching Fox 5 tomorrow morning, you're going to end up seeing that.
That's right. Well, it's all good though. So what we got the Texans and the Jags.
We got the Jags and the Texans. Yeah.
Texans.
It's 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Texans still
Oh, by the
have-
way, can we mention Saturday football's back? I like that.
You do? I don't.
You don't like football? A little NFL every?
No, I think they've messed up the market with the Monday night games that are not interesting, the Thursday night games that are not interesting. The Saturday games have been going on for a while, so whatever.
Oh,
Whatever.
All right.
Having said that, Jaguars, because Texans don't have a quarterback.
The Christmas Grinch, Wisdom Martin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jags as well. I
Okay.
won't waste your time.
That's
Jags
right.
as well.
All right, next.
We won't need to spend too much time here, I assume?
Ravens.
Ravens. Yep.
0-16 for the Browns this year.
We are 5 for 5 so far.
Okay.
It starts to get a little tougher.
Yes, it does.
Because Aaron Rodgers coming back. I
He
think,
is
right?
coming back. I think he's going to be a little rusty. While normally
agree.
the Packers are a better team and the Panthers are inconsistent, I'm going to go, because it's a home game, Panthers on this one.
If this was in Green Bay,
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
crowd cheering
Right.
Aaron's back, I
Right.
would be all for it.
Right.
But since it's at the Panthers and they've been a little bit of a roll,
Right.
I will give it to them as well.
Okay.
So 6 for 6. Wiz.
Okay.
Looks like this is going to be coming down to 1 or 2 games.
Okay. All right.
Dolphins at the Bills.
There's no way Miami is winning in cold weather. Bills.
That's when Sunday. Not the worst weather.
It's still going to be cold. It ain't South Beach. It ain't South
Beach.
Florida.
But this team just beat the Patriots. I think
I don't care.
They make the playoffs and they go
Miami?
all the way to the Super Bowl. Okay, I'm
Bills.
I'm fooling with you, but I'll take the Dolphins
Okay,
anyway.
see, there you go. Now
So-
we got a difference.
So finally we have a difference.
Okay,
All
all
right.
right.
Here we go. Bengals
And Vikings.
and Vikings.
All right. I'm going to surprise you and go with the Bengals on this one.
Really? You are surprised?
Oh, yeah. I'm not buying the
You
Vikings.
still don't buy the Vikings, even though they've been winning and winning.
Nope.
and
Not buying the
consistently
Vikings
winning.
at all. I'm going to go with the Bengals.
All right, Wiz. Well, Chick-fil-A is going to taste good twice in a row for me.
It probably will.
Vikings
okay.
all the way. Thielen.
Okay. All
Gonna
right.
have a big day.
Oh, yeah.
This one's
All right.
super small.
Okay. That's all right. We know who it is.
There we go.
We know who it is. Now,
Hometown
this goes
team
back.
who you have jinxed.
You know what?
last-
This is going to further prove my point that there is no jinx. I'm just going to go with the burgundy and gold right here.
So I think we've done this for 5 weeks. I think you picked the Redskins
Every time. Okay.
and they have won once.
Yeah, okay, so you're saying what?
That there's a jinx. Get out of here. Who was that one against? Wasn't it against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day, I think, or the week before?
It was the Giants.
It was
the Giants, yes.
Day.
And number 2 is going to be against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think
at home.
I think the Redskins will win as well, but I'm uncomfortable with it now.
Okay, all right. Why don't you pick the other way then?
I won't. I can't.
There is no, this again.
Cardinals have a good defense, but I think you're going to see a lot of what you see on the screen there going on.
Yeah, I don't know who's their quarterback. I don't know. Jim Hart, is he still playing for the Cardinals?
I forget who's their backup.
Neil Lomax. I mean, good gracious. All right, what we got here?
All right.
Giants and Eagles.
Division matchup. You would think the Eagles all the way, but no more quarterback. Carson Wentz done.
Eagles.
Not going to matter. I agree.
Giants have quit. I don't care if Eli, man. Hey, it's a good thing they put Eli back in there last week because he threw 2 picks.
Right.
Most ridiculous.
But you see all the fans holding their "Go Eli."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go Eli. Yeah. Go.
Yeah.
Go right on into the retirement home or to another team.
Do you think they meant go?
Yeah,
Eli?
they should because I don't know why they're holding. Here's the thing about the Giants. I've said this before. You've changed coaches. You fired another coach. You fired the general manager. The consistency here is Eli Manning.
Amen.
I'm just saying. Move
well,
on
he's
Eli.
getting old too. I mean, I know he wasn't old like his brother.
Getting old. Yeah. In the NFL, he's
ancient.
Well beyond his prime.
All right. You think he retires after this year?
No, I think he's going to be just like his brother and try to hang on and go somewhere else. He may end up in Washington. Who knows?
Probably will.
No, okay.
Get on track record.
Okay.
We're going to need a new quarterback after this season, right?
This one's easy too.
Is it?
Yeah, Saints. Easy. They're at home. They got that great running game. You know, Drew Brees ain't bad at quarterback, and the Jets are the Jets.
Drew Brees.
Yeah, he's all right. All right. Jets, B-E-A-T.
The Jets, for their credit, have been a little more resilient of late. But yes, I think Saints get it.
Okay.
All right, moving on.
Rams. Tough game. Although the Rams should go back to these uniforms.
I hate these uniforms.
I love this.
Why?
I just do. It's just original Rams. When I see that, I think Roman Gabriel. I think Eric Dickerson. Vince Ferragamo.
They look mustard yellow. Ugly.
Yes.
Ugly.
You know, when I was a kid, any team that wore yellow or gold, I liked.
Really?
Yeah, San Diego Chargers,
You've always
Rams,
liked gold, huh?
Steelers. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 49ers, they got gold. Yeah.
Well, one of those teams you said was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them was. So, having said all that, they're playing the Seahawks.
In Seattle.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks on this one.
As am I.
Okay.
Home team, better defense. And I kind of agree. I think the Rams are a little fake.
Yeah. Fake sports. Fake football.
News.
Fake football.
Fake news, fake sports.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
All right.
I'd like to think we're moving on.
Okay. You're having kind of technical difficulty. See, your creativity is running out as the season goes on.
It really is. I think the computer's getting a little sick of my creativity.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the next one anyway is Titans and 49ers. Sure, it's on there somewhere, right?
Titans.
Titans and the 49ers.
Titans
all the way?
Titans all the way. They're a better football team than the 49ers.
Too. So right now we only have 2 games that matter. The Dolphins and the Bills.
You only need to win by one. You only need to win by one.
But right now we could tie.
Okay.
I'm not so confident about Dolphins at Bills.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the next one because I think there may be some separation anxiety for the next one.
Really?
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Do it. Let's
now. All right. Here we go. Steelers and Patriots.
Steeltown City. Steelers on the roll.
Patriots.
They're playing for Shazier.
Right. The Steelers got a win. Patriots got beat by Miami. The previous week.
They look bad.
They look bad. Yeah, and because of that, I'm going to go with the Patriots this week.
That makes it. I'm nervous about this one, but obviously I'm a Steelers fan. I was up there last weekend. They looked great. Well, they didn't look that great to be fair, but they won.
Yeah.
And somehow they seem to always squeak by and win at home.
Right.
So I'm going to go with the Steelers.
See, there you go. Right. There you go. There's the difference right there.
Difference number 3.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Cowboys
easy.
Really?
Cowboys easy.
That's easy to use.
Yeah. Now that the Cowboys have figured out how to run the ball again, even because they got Smith, Alfred Morris, they're good to go.
They're good to go?
I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they're going to beat this team, the Raiders. One of the most disappointing teams in the NFL this year. Had high expectations, and they've so far been a dud.
They have been a dud.
Yeah.
But I think the Cowboys secondary is awful. I think Derek Carr's going to throw. I think it's going to be a big game since it's at the Raiders. Here we go, another difference.
Okay.
So you got the Cowboys.
Right.
I'm taking the Raiders. I bet you Crabtree has a pretty daggone good day against Cowboys. He's been 5 games without a touchdown.
All right. Alfred Morris is going to have a big day. He's going to be. Oh, this is going to be a dud.
Monday Night Football.
Another dud. This is what I was talking about in the beginning. Another dud of a football game on national television. Falcons are going to whoop them. Falcons are going to whoop them.
Okay. I have, and I just know this because I have Matt Ryan as my quarterback. He has been awful. Tucker, no one could see your face in that. So you were literally just dancing from the waist down.
Uh-oh. Do we have hoagies back here? Is this segment over?
Do we?
I think we do.
Yeah, okay. We're going to wrap this up real quick then.
Some Wawa hoagies are right
All right,
there.
Falcons all the way then.
Falcons all the way.
I agree. Falcons going to win.
All right.
Bucks aren't going to do anything.
Yeah.
All right.
So we got three game differences?
Yes. I guess since you haven't bought me Chick-fil-A yet, I guess if you win this week, we're back to neutral.
We'll be back to zero, back to ground zero.
And then it'll come down to the last
All
couple
right, I got to go get me a hoagie.
All right, go get you a hoagie. Awesome. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Wait.
Oh, my gosh.
Look at that thing.
What is that?
That's a Wawa hoagie, man.
Let me open that. Let me see what that looks like.
Hey,
who are these people?
Live on TV, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
on YouTube.
What's up, YouTube? We got hoagies.
I know.
Yeah, we interrupting anything here?
Oh, yeah. Are you serious?
Dancing.
First of all, Mike, who are these people?
I don't know. Why did they think they deserve subs after the show we just put on?
Right. And why are they walking around in here? I'm going to go get security.
All right.
I'm going to get security.
Get security.
Yeah.
All right, take care, Wiz.
Get these people out of here. Get people walking around here.
All right, that's what we got for Mike versus Wiz this week. I got a couple more minutes, so I'm going to finish up the little weather chat. Just a little fun, something to mix it up from weather, because yes, even I get bored of doing the weather when we do it every single day here. But I do want to mention a couple things that kind of happened overnight that were somewhat important in terms of the long term. I mentioned before, everybody asked me about Christmas this time of year. Let's kind of restart here. We had that clipper that moved through overnight, dropped a little bit of snow in northern Pennsylvania. That's now heading off the coast, and it's going to redevelop and bring some more snow to New England maybe later on tonight. The next kind of features we have to watch are this area low pressure here. See these clouds out here or on infrared, this area yellow? That's some energy that's going to come down, meet up with this southern moisture stream right here, and you're going to get a storm developing somewhere off the coastline out here as we head into your day on Friday, at the same time that this guy, another little clipper system, tries to pass off to our north and west. There'll be enough instability in the region that I think we could pop a snow flurry or two. But I don't think it's, unless this coastal storm is able to do like it did last Saturday and seriously trend north and west over the next, say, 24 hours, we're going to miss this one, and it's just going to be a couple of scattered snowflakes and no big deal. I don't see that happening right now. But we'll see. I mean, well, we always just kind of have to track these things through the last minute. As for Christmases, let's talk a little bit about Christmas. This is Christmas Eve, and I know it's pretty small on the screen, but let's see. Let's go there. This is all the Christmas Eves, and Christmas Eves of recent note have not been very kind to us in terms of getting snowfall on the ground. So we have done some snow flurries, it looks like, in 2013, 2012 and 2013. We had a little bit of light snow. Looks like mixing in with rain there in 2013. But last time we had measurable snow on Christmas Eve in Washington, D.C., you have to go all the way back to when we actually had a decent amount of it, which was, I'm just double checking, make sure I didn't miss one, 1966. That's how long it's been. We've been a little snow-starved. On Christmas Eve, we got 6.5 inches of snow that day. So that was the last time we got a dusting, and last time we got more than a dusting, and last time we got over an inch of snow was all the way back in 1966 here in Washington, D.C. Christmas Day now, I believe, has been even a little more moisture-starved. Haven't had some flurries in 2010. That was the last time we had any snowfall. We've had a couple rainy days. Looks like 2014 and 15 all had rain on Christmas Day. Last time we had measurable snow, which is like a dusting here on Christmas Day, was 2002. We got 0.2 of an inch of snow, but it looks like that was on the backside of a lot of rain. We had almost 3/4 an inch of rain. That's a decent amount of rain for Christmas Day. So that was probably a rain to snow or snow to rain situation there. So whatever was there likely melted right away. Probably this day in 1993, the time before that was the last time snow probably fell and actually stuck. 37.28 for a daytime low and a high. That'll get you sticking a little bit. Last time we had more than an inch of snow on Christmas Day, though, was all the way back in 1969, though, 4.3 inches of snow. So it's been a while since we've done a halfway decent snowstorm. Originally, I liked our odds, but unfortunately, I got bad news, and that is that our odds are getting worse. Again, we mentioned the lack of blocking. If you watched yesterday, there's just no more blocking across the northern half of the Arctic. So the cold air is going to kind of regather itself up in the Arctic, which is good. You need to recharge if you want even colder air to come down and up the chances for snow as we head into winter. But the timing's not going to be good for those of you who are hoping for, say, a white Christmas. And continue to move this forward. This is the Thursday before Christmas now, getting out to the Friday before Christmas. What you basically have going on is you're building a nice area, high pressure ridge up into Alaska, which I know my arrow kind of blends in there. But that will start the process of moving any cold Arctic air that reforms up to the north and to the west down into the United States. Problem is that core of the cold here looks like it wants to set up in this area for Christmas week. And that's going to allow an upper level ridge to build up underneath. So watch as I go forward here. This is the European model, by the way, which is the model I trust the most when you're talking about something that's 10 days in the future. This is now getting into the daytime hours of Christmas Eve, which I'm going to be honest, looks rather warm here. If this is correct, we could potentially be looking at temperatures in the upper 50s to lower 60s on Christmas Day, or Christmas Eve. If this is correct, that's a lot of warmth. Basically, you have a big, strong area of high pressure here, and that's going to pump up the warmth from the south and from the south and from the west here. So there will be moisture in place. That's going to run into cold and dry air spilling out of the mountains. So you're going to get a storm somewhere. But generally speaking, the rule of thumb is it's going to go right up in the weakness between the ridge and the trough. So I think your odds for a white Christmas Eve and white Christmas are on the rise, say if you're in Denver, Colorado, or through the northern plains, up through Minneapolis. Chicago's not totally out of it, but they look like they might end up on the warm side of things too. That's a lot of southwest flow coming straight off the Gulf and off the Pacific there. And we work into Christmas Day, you see, it's just not going anywhere fast. There we go into your day on Monday. This is now, it says the 26th, but 0Z is 7 o'clock on Monday night. Still big area high pressure here. Still all your cold is out here to the west. And if there's a storm, this looks less stormy to me, but if there's a storm, it's probably tracking up in that way, meaning better chance of rain versus snow. And unfortunately, it does look like Christmas is going to be on the warm side of things headed forward. Can models change? Absolutely. We've seen them change quite a bit over the past few days. But there's more agreement coming together that we're going to be heading for a warm period around the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day time frame. I do think the cold is coming again, but I think New Year's is kind of our goal. Again, you got a lot of cold air here, but as we get towards the end of this model run, what it is basically doing is watch, I'll kind of scroll through the last couple of frames here. Watch what happens in Greenland. So kind of watch this area of the screen right here. Watch what happens as I go forward. See the yellows and oranges trying to pull their way back into Greenland there? That's eventually going to send that cold air from the west over to the east. But again, I think it's closer to New Year's versus Christmas for it. I'm sorry, I really wanted a white Christmas this year, but based on everything I'm seeing right now, well, originally at the beginning of the season, I was like, hey, maybe instead of a 10% chance of a white Christmas, which is your normal here in DC, you have a 20% chance this year. Not all that high, but I was keeping my fingers crossed, given how we've started the month, that maybe we could do some cold and snow for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but that just doesn't look like it's going to be the case here. Again, if all models hold steady, we're talking warmth. And here's the earlier run of the GFS, which had rain on the 23rd, 24th, and then getting into the 25th, it's got showers, not snow showers. It's got rain showers here in DC. Again, I don't necessarily think that's correct. That's very far out in the American model. But I think the odds are more favorable that if we were to get precipitation around Christmas, that it's much more likely that it would be a rain event versus a snow event. This is let's see. This is all of our this is all of the modeling that's come out from the members. This is Christmas Day that I'm highlighting right here. 47%. There's like 51, I believe, European members in what that European ensemble model. Don't worry about those technical details. Just know that the vast majority of them, 47.1% of them, are going warm. 33 are going normal, and only 20 are going below normal. And you see those ones that are warm are actually very warm. Monday the 25th, 41% of them are well above normal. So that's why I was thinking maybe even 60 is possible. Only 6% of them are slightly above normal. So it's either normal or it's going gangbusters for Christmas in terms of getting the warmth into DC here. So that's some bad news. Again, was hoping for maybe some cold and some snow for Christmas, but it's not looking so good as things stand right this moment. All right, last check. We'll do a 7-day forecast here for you guys, just so you can quickly see, glance at what we have over the next 7 days. There it is. This is what we showed this morning. 45 today. The snow flurries from this morning are done. Actually, a decent amount of sunshine here this afternoon. We'll cloud back up tomorrow. We're cold tomorrow, only 37. Chance of snowflakes in the afternoon, but the weekend's not bad. Saturday should feature lots of sunshine, while Sunday the clouds will continue to build through the day. Although we will be a little warmer at 49 degrees Sunday afternoon. So for the Redskin game, should be dry. I just do think it's cloudy by the time the Redskins take the field. I believe they're one of the later games. No, you know what? They're a 1 o'clock game. I believe by that time we are going to be mostly cloudy, if not fully cloudy, here in D.C. Monday, spotty shower, but look at the temps, 57, 58 on Tuesday. We'll go back down a little bit after that. But as far as the really cold stuff, like days like tomorrow, with snow showers and your highs, say, in the 30s and 40s, I think those days are done for a little bit. I don't like our snow chances beyond tomorrow, and tomorrow's not that high of a snow chances. Yes, I know, Kathy, I'm sorry about the white Christmas. Hopefully things will change. You know, again, it's 10 days away. We'll keep our fingers crossed that maybe the modeling's wrong and we get colder faster, but as of today, I'm not too hopeful. I think most things have gone in the warmer direction. All right, guys, that's all I have. Molly's coming back here in just a couple minutes. She's going to have all your latest news headlines. I'm going to send you out with some more of that little Christmas beat. And I hope everybody has a good Thursday. Have a wonderful and safe Thursday afternoon. Stay warm. Tomorrow's colder. We'll talk more about the weekend, the extended forecast, and we'll see what tomorrow's models bring for Christmas for your Friday afternoon discussion that we'll have. All right, guys, that's all I have. Take care. Happy Thursday. It's almost Friday. TGIF. See you tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Guys, we're back in the newsroom for the news portion of Fox 5 Live. We're going to jump right into what you see below your screen. The FCC is voting on the repeal of net neutrality, and actually, it's going on right now, and we see the video coming in. This is really important. Lots of people on both sides of this issue. Yesterday, Kirsten Gillibrand from New York was talking about it. She penned an op-ed that it's been out there about this, and then others on the other side are saying, "Hey, we believe in free market. The free market should control it, and not the government, the federal government." So we got two sides of this issue. Of course, we're going to go right over to that vote, and then there will be a news conference following that, because that really is the big issue of the day. Essentially, talking about companies connecting you to the internet, to treating all content equally. So not making this surge, and you kind of get this being an IT guy, a surge in certain things and so having the internet service providers, of course, being at the top, basically in the policy terms, it means the government ensures that these ISPs don't block, slow, or discriminate against certain sites, causing them to be, I guess, more expensive, right? Fees on certain sites.
Yeah, they can restrict whoever they want, if they
because they have the power.
Yeah.
If they don't. If they do repeal this net neutrality, that's what will happen. So it's interesting to see kind of what exactly will happen from here and after this vote. But again, definitely the biggest, I think, portion of today, biggest news item that we have is this vote, and we've been kind of anticipating it for a few days. So we're going to go right over to the vote and the following news conference as well. All right.
All right.
Issues.
I
I'd also like to thank my colleagues for their support on this item. In particular, thanks to Commissioner O'Reilly, who has long called for a resolution to this issue, and to Commissioner Carr for his continued leadership on our wireless infrastructure reform docket. And last but most, thanks to the staff who worked on this item. Paul Dari, Garnet Hanley, Eli Johnson, Dan Margolis, Dana Schaefer, Jill Springer, Jeff Steinberg, Don Stockdale, Cecilia Solhoff, Suzanne Tatro, and Mary Claire York from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Janet Seifert from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Deborah Broderson, Linda Oliver, and Bill Richardson from the Office of General Counsel. Terrific work by all of you across these bureaus and offices. We'll now proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Clyburn.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Reilly.
Aye.
Commissioner Carr.
Aye.
Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Concur.
The chair votes aye as well. The item is adopted with editorial privileges granted as requested. Thanks to the staff for the great work. Madam Secretary, could you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the fourth item on your agenda will be presented by the Wireline Competition Bureau and is entitled Restoring Internet Freedom. Chris Monteith, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Terrific. Ms. Monteith, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
I think it's still morning, so good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
The Wireline Competition Bureau presents for your consideration a declaratory ruling, report and order on restoring internet freedom. The item would eliminate burdensome regulation that stifles innovation and deters investment, and empower Americans to choose the broadband internet access service that best fits their needs. I would like to thank the Competition Policy Division team for their amazing work on this proceeding. We also received invaluable input from our colleagues in the wireless telecommunications, consumer and governmental affairs, enforcement, media, and public safety and homeland security bureaus, as well as from the offices of General Counsel and Strategic Planning. Seated at the table with me from the Wireline Competition Bureau are Madeline Finley, Deputy Bureau Chief, Eric Ralph, Chief Economist, Daniel Kahn, Division Chief, Competition Policy Division, Melissa Kirkle, Assistant Division Chief, CPD, and Deborah Salins, Attorney Advisor, CPD. Joining me at the table from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau are Don Stockdale, Bureau Chief, and Neshe Gundelsberger, Deputy Bureau Chief, and from the Office of Strategic Planning, Jerry Ellig, Chief Economist. Deborah will now present the item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Morning.
This declaratory ruling, report and order takes several actions to restore internet freedom. First, the declaratory ruling restores broadband internet access service to its Title I Information Service classification. The item finds that reclassification as an information service best comports with the text and structure of the Communications Act, Commission precedent, and the Commission's policy objectives. In doing so, the item ends heavy-handed, utility-style regulation of the internet in favor of a light touch framework which worked for decades prior to 2015. The declaratory ruling also reinstates the private mobile service classification of mobile broadband internet access service and returns to the Commission's definition of interconnected service that existed prior to 2015. The item restores the authority of the Federal Trade Commission to enforce consumer protection and antitrust laws. It also clarifies the effects of the return to an information service classification on other regulatory frameworks, including the need to apply a uniform federal regulatory approach to interstate information services like broadband internet access service. Next, the report and order adopts a transparency rule that would require internet service providers to disclose information about their practices to consumers, entrepreneurs and other small businesses, and the Commission. The item returns to the transparency rule the Commission adopted in 2010 with certain improvements to promote additional transparency. The report and order would also eliminate the Commission's conduct rules. Based on the record evidence, the item finds that the conduct rules are unnecessary because the transparency requirement, together with antitrust and consumer protection laws, ensures that internet service providers engaging in behavior inconsistent with an open internet can be held accountable. The actions taken in this item will advance the Commission's critical work to promote broadband deployment in rural America and infrastructure investment throughout the nation, brighten the future of innovation.
Guys, we're going to continue to watch this vote. I know it seems like it could be a little bit slow and monotonous, but really, this is such an important issue. Actually, T, who works in, obviously, information technology here, knows a ton about this. Anybody who's really on the stream, if you guys are digital people, which you are, you're probably thinking about this, well-versed in it. It's definitely a big issue for you. And we've been talking about it for a while now, so this seems to come up every year, right, T?
Every year.
They want this vote, this type of repeal.
Yeah, personally, I don't understand why. I think like it's fine how it is. The internet was created as a, as a way of communication. You know, that's what the military used before the internet was available to the public. They used it as a form of communication to send data, essentially packets over a network. So, I mean, the idea of the internet is great as it is. I think it's open. You can do whatever you want. I don't see why they keep trying to repeal it. I guess, to make money or whatever they need to do. But I don't see how limiting certain sites, like, for example,
YouTube,
like
Netflix, stuff like that.
Yeah, things like that. If Netflix isn't, paying for ads or something, then they can easily just be like, okay, we're going to slow the connection down. Yeah. And then the user, from a user perspective, you're going to be like, Netflix is pretty bad, but honestly, it's going to come down to your ISP, your internet service provider.
Internet service provider in the end.
So Comcast, Verizon, one that I wish would come to the DC area is Google Fiber. So, because Google is actually I think Google is actually very against, they're for net neutrality. So I think those are one of the few companies that, people can actually trust.
That's what's interesting. To see these grandiose companies that would be sort of on the path to making a ton more, to see them for or against this repeal, rather.
Yeah. And I think, and if this does pass, I think I
don't really know the next steps, to be honest, like how it all rolls out.
People will leave their internet service providers eventually, but I mean, it's going to be the same thing no matter where you go. If you need internet, you're going to, it's just going to be, it's going to be highly restricted. and
Yeah.
certain things that things that you want to see on the internet or want to do on the internet at a certain time, it can be. It would just suck to. If you can't access those at the right speeds.
I know that the current chairman of the FCC actually told PBS in this little interview, he said his concern is that we could, I guess, it would keep them from kind of building out the internet access to a lot of parts of the country, like low-income areas, urban and rural areas. So that's sort of his argument. Now, I believe there are two people. One is Jessica Rosenworcel, who penned this op-ed with Kirsten Gillibrand last night about how the repeal would actually be bad for women. That was kind of an interesting side of it, talking about small businesses and women-run businesses on the internet and how they sort of succeed, and saying that would hinder women, which I thought was a pretty interesting side of it. But again, the chairman is the one that's saying he wants to roll it back and has an objection to not repealing it. So it's kind of interesting, the people on the commission who's for and against, but yeah.
I think the point of the internet was to just keep it open and fair for anyone using it. So
and that's definitely a view. Yeah.
I think it should definitely
still
be open and fair. I don't see why anybody should. We don't need a middleman to say. Oh,
I mean, that's what some people. Yeah, and there's obviously both of the sides that I've been hearing about this today. So if you guys are on the stream and you have a thought on this, I know some of you did yesterday, but continue to chat with us on our live chat and let us know what you think, so we can shout you out and see what you think throughout this. But this vote is ongoing this morning, and then there'll be, like I said, a news conference about it. It's a big day for internet stuff. We've been seeing this all over Reddit and some of the other blogs and the sites talking about some of the protests that may go on, some of the rallies that probably are going on right now.
There are protests actually around our area too. My friend was in one of them.
Okay. Like around the Capitol and stuff?
Yes. Around Northwest.
Yeah, if you guys are just joining us, we're talking about net neutrality. Obviously, live on your screen right now is the vote, the FCC Commission voting there to repeal, and I put there down below what's next for ISPs and their users. What's going to be, what are the charges going to be? What's going to be kind of bundled together? Who's really going to win out on this? It'll be interesting to see. It's a big day for the internet. We're talking net neutrality, Mike.
Are you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Trying to see if people in the newsroom have an opinion, but if you guys have a thought, let us know.
Was it broken? I didn't know it was broken.
This guy.
I need fixing the first time. It wasn't.
That's exactly my point too.
Lots of opinions being thrown around here, so let us know yours, and we're going to continue to watch this and kind of jump back in here and there. Illinois guy, hey, how you doing? How you doing, Kathy? Good to see you guys on the stream. Stay on with us as we watch this vote. We'll also bring you some other breaking news as we have it, whatever comes in via our cameras, and we'll definitely check into the news conference after this vote to see what's up. But you can see there's the wide pan, the commission on your right, and it goes on this morning. So
yeah, fingers crossed, guys.
We'll see what happens here. All right, we're going to bring that back full screen, bring you a little volume on this.
Online business models. And yes, I have heard from consumers who are worried, given that their broadband providers has already shown that they will charge inscrutable below-the-line fees, raise prices unexpectedly, and put consumers on hold for hours at a time. Who will have their best interests at heart in a world without clear and enforceable rules, overseen by an agency without any clear authority? Would that agency be a toothless FCC? Now, there is a darker side to all of this that we have witnessed over the past few weeks. Threats and intimidation, personal attacks, Nazi cheering, Russian influence, fake comments. These are unacceptable. Some of these actions are illegal. They are all to be rejected. But what is also not acceptable is the FCC's refusal to cooperate with the state attorney general's investigations or allow evidence in the record that would undercut what can only be described as a preordained outcome. Now, many have been asking me, what happens next? How will all of this, net neutrality, my internet experience, look after today's decision? My answer is a simple one. When the current protections are abandoned and the rules that have been officially in place since 2015 are repealed, we will have a Cheshire Cat version of net neutrality. We will be in a world where regulatory substance fades to black, and all that is left is a broadband provider's toothy grin, because they have teeth, however you conjugate that. And those oh so comforting words, we have every incentive, don't worry, we have every incentive to do the right thing. But what they will soon have is every incentive to do their own thing. Now, the results of throwing out net neutrality protections may not be felt right away. Most of us will get up tomorrow morning, get ready for work, and over the next week, wade through what would be, no doubt, hundreds of headlines. We will grow tired of those hundreds of headlines. We will grow tired hearing from endless prognosticators, and we will quickly submerge ourselves into a sea of holiday bliss. But what we have wrought today will one day be apparent, and by then, when you really wake up and see what has changed, I fear it may be too late to do anything about it, because there will be no agency empowered to address your concerns. This item insidiously ensures that the FCC will never be able to fully grasp the harm it may have unleashed on the internet ecosystem. And that inability might lead decision makers to conclude that the next internet startup that failed to flourish, that attempted to seek relief by whatever authority may or may not be in charge, with many teeth they might have left, simply that maybe they just had a bad business plan, when in fact, the actual culprit was the absence of a level playing field online. Particularly damning is what today's repeal would mean for marginalized groups, like communities of color, that rely on platforms like the internet to communicate. You see, traditional outlets rarely, if ever, consider their issues or concerns worthy of coverage. It was through social media, remember, that the world first heard about Ferguson, Missouri, because those legacy outlets did not consider them worthy enough for coverage until that hashtag started trending. It has been through online video services that targeted entertainment ecosystems thrive, where stories are finally being told because those very same programs that were submitted for consideration were rejected time and time again by mainstream media and distribution, mainstream distribution and media outlets. And it has been through secure messaging platforms where activists have communicated and organized for justice without gatekeepers who may or may not have differing opinions blocking them. Where will the next significant attack on internet freedom come from? Maybe from a broadband provider allowing its network to congest, making a high traffic video provider ask what more can it pay to make that pain go away? That will never happen, you say? Newsflash, it already has. The difference now is the open question of what is stopping them. The difference after today's vote is that no one will be able to stop them. Maybe several providers will quietly roll out paid prioritization packages that will enable deep pocket players to cut the queue. Maybe a vertically integrated broadband provider decides that it will favor its own apps and services, or some high-value Internet of Things traffic will be subject to an additional fee. Maybe some of these actions will be cloaked under non-disclosure agreements and wrapped up in mandatory arbitration clauses so that it will be a breach of contract to disclose these publicly or take the provider to court if there is any wrongdoing. Some may say, of course this will never happen, but after today's vote, what will be in place to stop any of this? What we do know is that broadband providers did not even wait for the ink to dry on a proposed order before making their moves. One broadband provider who had in the past promised to not engage in pay prioritization has now quietly dropped that promise from its list of commitments on its website. What's next? Blocking or throttling? That will never happen, you say? After today's vote, exactly who is the cop on the beat that can or will stop them? And just who will be impacted the most? Consumers and small businesses, that's who. The internet continues to evolve and has become even more critical for every participant in our 21st century ecosystems. Government services have migrated online, as have educational opportunities, job notices, and applications. But at the same time, broadband providers have continued to consolidate. They have become bigger. They own their own content. They own their own media companies. And they own or have interest in other types of competing services. So why are millions of Americans so alarmed? Because they understand the risk this all poses. And even those who might not exactly know what it means when somebody says Title II authority, what they know is that they will be at risk without it. Now, I've been asking myself repeatedly why the majority is so single-focused on overturning these wildly popular rules. Is it simply because they felt that the 2015 net neutrality order, which threw out over 700 rules, which dispensed with more than 25 provisions, was too heavy-handed? Or is this a ploy to create a need for legislation where there was none before? Or is it to establish uncertainty where little previously existed? Is it a tactic to undermine the net neutrality protections adopted in 2015 that are currently parked at the Supreme Court? You know, the very same rules that were resoundingly upheld by the DC Circuit last year? No doubt, we will see a rush to the courthouse asking the Supreme Court to vacate and remand the substantive rules that we have fought so hard for over the past few years, because today, the FCC uses legally suspect means to clear the decks of substantive protections for consumers and competition. It is abundantly clear why we see so much bad process with this item, because the fix was already in. There is no real mention of the thousands of net neutrality complaints filed by consumers. Why? The majority has refused to put them in the record, while maintaining the rhetoric that there have been no real complaints or no real violations. Record evidence of massive incentives and abilities of broadband providers to act in anti-competitive ways are missing from the docket. Why? Because those in charge have refused to use the data and knowledge the agency does have and has relied on in the past to inform our merger reviews. As the majority has shown time and time again, the views of individuals do not matter, including the views of those who care deeply about the substance.
He nailed that.
All right, guys, so we're watching this vote on net neutrality. If you're still with us, I'm here with our IT guy, who definitely, obviously knows the web, as do you guys. You're streaming us right now on YouTube. And essentially, what we've been talking about with some people in the newsroom is that this vote is essentially decided. The commissioner, the chairman, rather, appointed by President Trump, has come out for this repeal, as have 4 other people on the commission, right? And there's 2 votes.
Yes.
Against it. So we are kind of just waiting to see sort of their spiels and what happens from here, and then here in the news conference what goes on. But Fitz was saying, our political reporter, that there could be some backlash and some bringing back this issue in court to kind of go against it. So it might take a little while for everything to kind of settle and actually be in place. But essentially, we're talking about companies that are connecting us to the internet, treating everything the same, not charging you a little more or slowing down the speed of some application that you use, YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, other little side things. that you guys are on. You probably are on YouTube right now or on our website, but that's the general kind of gist of it, right?
Yeah.
And now we see, as though we've seen this kind of time after time, now we see an opportunity for this to actually happen, the repeal.
And it's actually pretty interesting and sad and dark at the same time. It's for anyone who
like
cherishes the internet, like people like millennials do, you know. I think it's going to be kind of tough to. Well, I mean, I think things will still be the same. A lot things won't change like overnight, but
right, things won't change overnight. But
it's going to be tough for those who can't really, I guess, afford maybe
smaller sites that can't afford to pay more to let those internet service providers let people use them and or keep the fast speed of those smaller sites.
Also, I guess they have to keep good relationships with these internet service providers now, because if they do ever, you know, come into any issues or problems, then I guess the internet service provider could use that as a way to, you know, slow down their portion of service.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfair if you think about it. America, we're supposed to be the land of the free, and I guess, you know, internet is, you know, worldwide.
You guys might be. I know you guys are watching from all over. Essentially, this decision, as we know it, we know it's 4-2 on the commission for what they think. So we pretty much know how it's going to turn out. But it's essentially going to change how people can access the internet. So this will be a big one, I think. This is a big talker for today. And not to keep you on the same sort of topic all morning, but we are going to talk about some other stuff. Quickly, I just saw Illinois guy, you mentioned it is the anniversary of Sandy Hook. We were talking about this earlier this morning. Can't believe it's been 5 years, 2012, since that mass shooting in Connecticut. I think you all probably remember right where you were when it happened. I do. Really a tragic day. So something that we're remembering today here. And I was reading about some of the people that were involved in that, some of the parents who have now become advocates for whether it's gun control matters or mental health. They are now they've left their lives and their day careers to be advocates for these other causes because of what happened so close to home for them. So it's definitely a big day for those remembering that day in 2012. Just switching that topic a little bit, but we still have this vote here. The language is pretty interesting, I think, especially for digitally savvy people. She's talking about social media. She's talking about different sites. I think it's interesting for us internet people. So I do want to keep it there. So T's going to go off to a meeting, and we're gonna listen into this vote a little bit more. This is live on Capitol Hill.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, T.
Of the 2015 net neutrality rules, carefully crafted rules that actually struck an appropriate balance in providing consumer protections and enabling opportunities and investment. I actually take what I'll just call ironic comfort in the words of then Commissioner Pai back in 2015, because I believe this will ring true about this destroying internet freedom order. I am optimistic, he said, that we will look back on today's vote as an aberration, a temporary deviation from the bipartisan path that has served us so well. I don't know whether this plan will be vacated by a court, reversed by Congress, or overturned by a future commission, but I do believe that its days are numbered. Amen to that, Mr. Chairman. Amen to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. I'm going to mark you down as a no. So that's Commissioner O'Reilly.
To the main event. I'll have a longer statement if it's believable, since this is long enough itself. The order before us represents the culmination of extensive work by the agency staff to carefully consider whether net neutrality rules are truly warranted, thoroughly reviewing the legal underpinnings, economic analysis, and practical effects, as debated extensively and exhaustively in the record of this proceeding. I agree with the decision, and I support such a well-reasoned and soundly justified order. While I have longstanding views on this topic, I approached this proceeding with an open mind. I read the substantive comments with interest and met with anyone I could, no matter how of their or what their particular viewpoint. In the end, I'm simply not persuaded that heavy-handed rules are needed to protect against hypothetical harms. In all this time, I've yet to hear recent unquestionable evidence of demonstrable harms to consumers that demands providers be constrained by this completely flawed regulatory intervention. I still cannot endorse guilt by imagination. It is a shame that this topic has been plagued by baseless fear-mongering. Many small businesses have been blatantly misled into thinking that they're going to be forced to pay more to continue to do business online. Others have been told that free speech and civil rights are on the line. It simply isn't true, and we know that from experience. The internet has functioned without net neutrality rules far longer than with them. Nobody can name more than a handful of examples that occurred over the course of an entire decade prior and that were readily dealt with, whether actual violations or not. The legend of a cable company trying to break the internet may make a scary bedtime story for children of telecom geeks, but it isn't reality. So, for those of you out there that are fearful of what tomorrow may bring, please take a deep breath. This decision will not break the internet. What we are doing is reverting back to the highly successful, bipartisan, governmental approach that existed before 2015. As the order makes clear, we depart from the prior Commission's approach because we determined that the decision was flawed. We believe that our statutory interpretation and course of action is the better one, and our decision is grounded in and supported by the record. The text has been publicly available for over 3 weeks, and our good staff has summarized it for us today. So there is no need for me to step through the policies and reasoning again in detail. Instead, I'll highlight a few key parts and address some of the false arguments and misconceptions regarding the substance and process. While repealing net neutrality rules grabs headlines, reversing the classification of broadband internet access service as a Title II telecommunications service is far more consequential. Net neutrality started as a consumer issue, but it soon became a stepping stone to impose vastly more onerous common carrier regulations on broadband companies. Even the previous chairman initially attempted to reinstate net neutrality rules under more limited legal authority, and many companies would have accepted the compromise and lived with net neutrality rules as long as the Commission didn't impose Title II. But thanks to one infamous YouTube video posted by the prior administration, this so-called independent agency was quickly railroaded into treating ISPs like public utilities instead. As discussed at length in the order, and the dissents of Chairman Pai and myself wrote in response to 2015 order, there were fundamental legal problems and factual errors underlying that decision to treat fixed and mobile broadband services as telecommunications services. Additionally, that decision opened the door for much broader regulation of broadband providers, and as we saw, the Commission quickly walked through that door. Under this structure, companies continue to face uncertainty that business decisions, commercial negotiations, service offerings, and pricing decisions would be scrutinized by the Commission. I believe that these legitimate concerns were well-founded, and if there had not been a change in administration, the agency would have proceeded further down the path as demonstrated by its zero-rating witch hunt. The decision to reinstate the classification of both fixed and mobile broadband internet access service as an information service under Section 3 and reinstate the classification of mobile broadband as a private mobile service under Section 332 eliminates these concerns and restores a sensible bipartisan approach to broadband services. Under this framework, the FCC asserts jurisdiction over broadband internet access service as an interstate information service, but applies regulation only to the extent warranted to address specific concrete concerns. With the elimination of Title II, there's no remaining legal basis for the net neutrality bright line rules and general conduct standard, so we must repeal them. In many proceedings before this agency, I've questioned the need for rules that impose costs but do not solve real problems, so the removal is completely appropriate and necessary. That isn't necessarily the end of the story, however. Congress may enact legislation providing new rules and legal authority to support them. I firmly believe that that would be the better course and the only way to get finality to this issue. I would humbly suggest, however, that the general conduct standard remain forever in the ash heap. This policy gave the Commission's Enforcement Bureau unbounded power to make up the rules as it went along, a frightening prospect. Businesses could find themselves subject to investigation without any prior notice that the conduct could be considered a violation. One public interest group even called the catch-all a recipe for overreach and confusion. It was the height of regulatory capriciousness and should never be resurrected. Similarly, I am hopeful that if the Congress does go down this path, it will see merit in rejecting a ban on paid prioritization. Clearly, there are cases today, and many more that will develop in time, in which the option of a paid prioritization offering would be a necessity based on either technology or needs of consumer welfare. I, for one, see great value in the prioritization of telemedicine and autonomous car technology over cat videos. And speaking of autonomous cars, we must ensure that wireless providers can manage their systems. Wireless networks have capacity constraints based on the physics of the spectrum they use. Generally, wireless use is booming, and more Americans are using wireless networks to access the internet. But this is just the beginning. Consider that each autonomous car vehicle is predicted to generate an additional 4 terabytes of data a day, much of which will be carried by wireless networks. It is hard to imagine that some prioritization of traffic will not be necessary, further undermining attempts to ban such practices. Although the order eliminates the bright line rules and general conduct standard, it does leave a version of the transparency requirements in place. In fact, the requirements are more extensive than those first adopted in 2010. While I remain skeptical of the legal authority for them or their value given the FTC's authority and without a mechanism to get them removed. If a business fails to disclose relevant information or its practices differ from what is described, it will be subject to the investigation and enforcement as outlined in the recent FCC-FTC Memorandum of Understanding. But I sincerely doubt that legitimate businesses are willing to subject themselves to a PR nightmare for attempting to engage in blocking, throttling, or improper discrimination. It is simply not worth the reputational cost and potential loss of business. Will I have to accept the decision to rely on Section 257 as authority for the transparency requirements? I do not believe that Section 218 or the provisions of Title III cited in the circulated version of the order should be invoked here. I'm relieved that they've been removed from the item at my request. Lastly, but certainly not least, the order contains a clear declaration that broadband is an interstate information service, and a robust preemption analysis included. The order makes plain that broadband will be subject to uniform national framework that promotes investment and innovation. This is eminently reasonable and completely consistent with the Constitution's Commerce Clause. Broadband service is not confined to state boundaries and should not be constrained by a patchwork of state and local regulations. And this is particularly germane to wireless services, where mobile devices and the transmissions they carry can easily cross state lines. This could have dramatic and drastic results where it was possible for such communications to be prioritized in one state but not in another. A hodgepodge of state rules could severely curtail not only the next generation of wireless systems that we have been working so hard to promote, but also the technologies that may rely on these networks in the future. Accordingly, any laws or regulations that conflict with or undermine the federal broadband policies are preempted. Given my druthers, I would actually have gone further on preemption, but I can only carry the debate so far today. This is not a new or novel position. The 2015 order, also announced a firm intention to exercise our preemption authority to preclude states from imposing obligations on broadband service that are inconsistent with the carefully tailored regulatory scheme. While the rules we adopt today are obviously different than the 2015 order, the concept that we will preempt inconsistent state and local requirements is well established. Although the order does acknowledge an extremely limited state role in enforcing their traditional police powers, state actions that go beyond this realm will be subject to scrutiny and challenge. The order makes clear that any requirements akin to common carrier regulation are barred. At my request, the order also specifies that states may not adopt their own transparency requirements, whether labeled as such or under the guise of consumer protection. I would also view state broadband privacy actions as outside the scope of what is permissible. The purpose of this order is to restore a light touch approach to deregulation. Therefore, any action to increase regulatory burdens on broadband providers would run directly counter to our efforts. I hope that most states and localities would not waste time and resources attempting to push the boundaries, but I realize that some will do so regardless. I expect the agency to be vigilant in identifying and pursuing these cases. I also commit to work closely with the chairman and the general counsel to quash any conflicts that arise. Before concluding, I want to address the atmospherics surrounding the process in this proceeding. I'll start with the number and identity of the comments submitted. Some would like us have us believe that the comment process has been irreparably tainted by the large number of fake comments. That view reflects a lack of understanding about the Administrative Procedure Act. The agency is required to consider and respond to all significant comments in the record. Millions of comments that simply say something along the lines of keep net neutrality or other colorful language we can't say in public, including a couple who referred to me as a potato. Whether
Wait, stop. Really?
Yeah. Say that I look like a potato. Okay.
Oh. No comment.
I meant it in a good way. Sorry.
Whether or not they are submitted by real people, bots, or honey badgers have no impact on the decision. As the order makes clear, we do not rely on any such comments. To be clear, that does not mean that comments were ignored. I commend staff for the extra effort that they had to sift through these extraneous comments. Many were simply obscenity-laced tirades. Yet the order reflects a careful evaluation and response to all the significant comments, including those that took a different position. Additionally, I disagree with the suggestion the Commission should have held public hearings. Any member of the public that wanted to express a view could have done so through the standard comment process, and many did. Public hearings may bring about some additional people in a particular location, but is inefficient for the reaching large numbers of interested parties from around the country. Finally, I see no merit in the suggestion that the agency should have delayed this vote until after the Ninth Circuit issues a decision in the en banc of the FTC versus AT&T Mobility case. While the panel decision raised some questions about the FTC's jurisdiction, it was widely viewed with skepticism. Moreover, the court's order granting en banc rehearing of the panel decision rendered it a legal nullity. Therefore, the FTC is not precluded from enforcing ISP's net neutrality commitments. In short, there is no basis for delay. I commend the chairman, his team, our hardworking and diligent staff for their enormous effort to produce an order of this quality and significance. I am sure that this task required long days and much time spent away from family and friends, and I hope that you'll be able to rest and reconnect over the holiday season. It is very deserved, and you'll have my full respect and profound appreciation for your work. I will vote to approve. I thank the chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. This is a great day for consumers, for innovation, and for freedom. We're reversing the Obama-era FCC's unprecedented decision to apply Title II regulations to the internet. I'm proud to help end this 2-year experiment with heavy-handed regulation, this massive regulatory overreach. Prior to the FCC's 2015 decision, consumers and innovators alike benefited from a free and open internet. This was not because the government imposed utility-style regulation. It didn't. This was not because the FCC had a rule regulating internet conduct. It had none. Instead, through Republican and Democratic administrations alike, including through the first 6 years of the Obama administration, the FCC abided by a 20-year bipartisan consensus that the government should not control or heavily regulate internet access. The internet flourished under this framework. The private sector invested over $1.5 trillion in broadband networks. Consumers were protected and enjoyed the freedom to access the websites and content of their choosing. Every part of the internet economy benefited, from innovators on the edge to startups and businesses of every size. Title II did not build that. Title II did not create the open internet. And Title II is not the way to maintain it. The FCC's light regulatory touch, coupled with the robust consumer protections we restore today, supported our country's extraordinary internet success story. After a 2-year detour, one that has seen investment decline, broadband deployments put on hold, and innovative new offerings shelved, it's great to see the FCC returning to this proven regulatory approach. Now, there's no doubt that the debate over internet regulation has generated significant public attention, as it should. I, for one, have learned some colorful new turns of phrases through the course of this proceeding. And much of this is no surprise. Americans cherish the free and open internet. But when it comes to this proceeding, far too many are simply fanning the false flames of fear. The apocalyptic rhetoric is quite something, even by Washington standards. No, the FCC is not ending the internet, or as President Obama's first Federal Trade Commission chairman recently put it, the sky isn't falling, consumers will remain protected, and the internet will flourish. What we're doing with today's vote is reversing a 2-year-old decision and returning to a tried and true regulatory framework, one that we know from our own experience works for consumers and for innovation. Many of the myths that are out there go to what I call the great Title II head fake, which is attributing to Title II things that it simply does not do. Some claim, for instance, that Title II is preventing ISPs from selling bundled or curated plans that offer access to only a portion of the internet. It's not true. The FCC expressly stated that Title II, right now, allows providers to do just that. Some claim that Title II is preventing ISPs from increasing their prices for broadband, so they're going to see a spike immediately after this decision. But the FCC emphasized that its Title II decision involves, quote, no rate regulation. And some claim that Title II is preventing ISPs from blocking, throttling, or engaging in paid prioritization. This is also not true. The DC Circuit said that Title II allows ISPs to, quote, block websites, to, quote, throttle applications chosen by ISPs, and, quote, to filter content into fast lanes and slow lanes based on ISPs' commercial interests, provided that they disclose those practices. In other words, Title II is not the thin line between where we are right now and some Mad Max version of the internet. There are reasons that consumers enjoyed a free and open internet long before Title II. There are reasons why consumers are free to access any website or online content of their choosing, and those reasons will continue to hold true long after our Title II experiment ends today. What are they? Well, the DC Circuit has offered its view. When it observed that Title II allows ISPs to offer filtered internet access, it also said that none were doing so because of what it said as fear of subscriber losses. In other words, market forces, not the Title II rules, are regulating this conduct. Now, there are some that will never accept market forces as a solution, either in the broadband marketplace or otherwise. But for them, today's order has some more good news. We're not relying on market forces alone. We're not giving ISPs free rein to dictate your online experience. Our decision today includes powerful legal checks. First, Americans will enjoy robust online protections. When the FCC classified broadband as a Title II Title II service in 2015, it divested the Federal Trade Commission of 100% of its consumer protection authority over ISPs, including its ability to police ISPs that engage in unfair or deceptive practices. Repealing Title II will restore important protections for internet openness. Second, consumers will regain strong online privacy protections. Before the FCC stripped it of jurisdiction, the FTC, the nation's most experienced privacy enforcement agency, brought over 500 privacy enforcement actions, including against ISPs. By reversing Title II, consumers get those privacy protections back. Third, federal antitrust law will protect against discriminatory conduct by ISPs. As a former Obama administration FTC chairman recently said, this is a formidable hammer against anyone who would harmfully block, throttle, or prioritize traffic. Fourth, State consumer protection laws will apply, and state attorney generals can bring actions against ISPs. These authorities will provide another strong set of legal protections against unfair business practices by ISPs. In short, this is no free-for-all. This is no Thunderdome. The FCC is not killing the internet. While I spent most of my time today talking about the policy debate surrounding Title II, there's also a threshold legal question that the Commission must answer. Does Internet Access Service qualify as a Title I information service or Title II telecommunications service? Thankfully, I don't need to go beyond what the order itself says on this point. After all, in 2005, the Supreme Court expressly found that the FCC has authority to classify Internet Access Service as a Title I service. This remains the only classification blessed by the Supreme Court. So our decision today rests on sound legal footing. In closing, I want to look back 2 years ago to 2015 one more time. In October of that year, long before I became a commissioner, I gave a speech where I talked about the FCC's then recent Title II decision. I ended that speech by saying this: I'm optimistic the U.S. will return to the successful light touch approach to the internet that spurred massive investments in our broadband infrastructure. Efforts are underway in both the courts and Congress to reverse the FCC's decision. And following next year's presidential election, the composition of the FCC could be substantially different than it is today. Now, 2 years ago, I certainly did not imagine that I would be part of the FCC's new composition. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity to serve, and I'm grateful that my optimism back then has proven to be well-founded. I'm glad to cast my vote today in favor of internet freedom. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Okay. Net neutrality is internet freedom. I support that freedom. I dissent from this rash decision to roll back net neutrality rules. I dissent from the corrupt process that has brought us to this point, and I dissent from the contempt this agency has shown our citizens in pursuing this path today. This decision puts the Federal Communications Commission on the wrong side of history, the wrong side of the law, and the wrong side of the American public. The future of the internet is the future of everything. That is because there is nothing in our commercial, social, or civic lives that has been untouched by its influence or unmoved by its power. And here in the United States, our internet economy is the envy of the world. This is because it rests on a foundation of openness. That openness is revolutionary. It means you can go where you want and do what you want online without your broadband provider getting in the way or making choices for you. It means every one of us can create without permission, build community beyond geography, organize without physical constraints, consume content we want, when and where we want it, and share ideas not just around the corner, but across the globe. I believe it is essential that we sustain this foundation of openness, and that is why I support net neutrality. Net neutrality has deep origins in communications law and history. In the era when communications meant telephony, every call went through, and your phone company could not cut off your call or edit the content of your conversations. This guiding principle of non-discrimination meant you were in control of the connections you make. This principle continued as time advanced, technology changed, and internet access became the dial tone of the digital age. So it was 12 years ago when President George W. Bush was in the White House that this agency first put its net neutrality policies on paper. In the decade that followed, the FCC revamped and revised its net neutrality rules, seeking to keep them current and find them a stable home in the law. In its 2015 order, the FCC succeeded because in the following year, in a 184-page opinion, the agency's net neutrality rules were fully and completely upheld in court. So our existing net neutrality policies have passed court muster. They are wildly popular. But today we wipe away this work, destroy this progress, and burn down time-tested values that have made our internet economy the envy of the world. As a result of today's misguided action, our broadband providers will get extraordinary new powers. They will have the power to block websites, the power to throttle services, and the power to censor online content. They will have the right to discriminate and favor the internet traffic of those companies with whom they have a pay-for-play arrangement, and the right to consign all others to a slow and bumpy road. Now, our broadband providers will tell you they will never do these things. They say, just trust us. But know this, they have the technical ability and business incentive to discriminate and manipulate your internet traffic. And now this agency gives them the legal green light to go ahead and do so. This is not good. Not good for consumers, not good for businesses, not good for anyone who connects and creates online. Not good for the democratizing force that depends on openness to thrive. Moreover, it is not good for American leadership on the global stage of our new and complex digital world. I'm not alone with these concerns. Everyone from the creator of the World Wide Web to religious leaders, to governors and mayors of big cities and small towns, to musicians, to actors, to actresses, to entrepreneurs and academics and activists have registered their upset and anger. They are reeling at how this agency could make this kind of mistake. They are wondering how it could be so tone-deaf. And they are justifiably concerned that just a few unelected officials could make such a vast and far-reaching decision about the future of the internet. So after erasing our net neutrality rules, what is left? What recourse do consumers have? We're told, don't worry, competition will save us. But the FCC's own data show that our broadband markets are not competitive. Half the households in this country have no choice of broadband provider. So if your broadband provider is blocking websites, you have no recourse. You have nowhere to go. We're told, don't worry, the Federal Trade Commission will save us. But the FTC is not the expert agency for communications. It has authority over unfair and deceptive practices. But to evade FTC review, all any broadband provider will need to do is add new provisions to the fine print in its terms of service. In addition, it is both costly and impractical to report difficulties to the FTC. By the time the FTC gets around to addressing them in court proceedings or enforcement actions, it's fair to assume that the startups and small businesses wrestling with discriminatory treatment could be long gone. Moreover, what little authority the FTC has is now under question in the courts. We're told, don't worry, state authorities will save us. But at the same time, the FCC all but clears the field with sweeping preemption of anything that resembles state or local consumer protection. If the substance that got us to this point is bad, the process is even worse. Let's talk about the public record. The public has been making noise, speaking up, raising a ruckus. We see it in the protests across this country, those that are outside here today, and we see it how they have lit up our phone lines, clogged our email inboxes, and jammed our online comment system. Now that might be messy, but whatever our disagreements are on this dais, I hope we can agree that that is democracy in action and something we can all support. To date, nearly 24 million comments have been filed in this proceeding. There is no record in the history of this agency that has attracted so many filings. But there's something foul in this record. 2 million comments feature stolen identities. 500,000 comments are from Russian email addresses. 50,000 consumer complaints are inexplicably missing from the record. I think that's a problem. I think our record has been corrupted and our process for public participation lacks integrity. 19 state attorneys general agree. They have written us demanding we halt our vote until we investigate and get to the bottom of this mess. Identity theft is a crime under state and federal law. And while it is taking place, this agency has turned a blind eye to its victims and callously told our fellow law enforcement officials it will not help. This is not acceptable. It's a stain on the FCC and this proceeding. This issue is not going away. It needs to be addressed. Finally, I worry that this decision and the process that brought us to this point is ugly. It's ugly in the cavalier disregard this agency has demonstrated to the public, the contempt it has shown for citizens who speak up, and the sheer disdain it has for public opinion. Unlike its predecessors, this FCC has not held a single public hearing on net neutrality. There is no shortage of people who believe Washington is not listening to their concerns, their fears, and their desires. Add this agency to that list. Now, I too am frustrated, but here's a twist. I hear you. I listen to what the callers to my office are saying. I read the countless individually written emails in my inbox, the posts online, and the very short and sometimes very long letters. And I'm not going to give up. And neither should you. If the arc of history is long, we are going to bend this toward a more just outcome. In the courts, in Congress, wherever we need to go to ensure that net neutrality stays the law of the land. Because if you are conservative or progressive, you benefit from internet openness. If you come from a small town or a big city, you benefit from internet openness. If you are a company or a nonprofit, you benefit from internet openness. If you are a startup or an established business, you benefit from internet openness. If you are a consumer or a creator, you benefit from internet openness. And if you believe in democracy, you benefit from internet openness. So let's persist, let's fight, let's not stop here or now. It's too important. The future depends on it.
Thank you, Commissioner. The internet is the greatest free market innovation in history. It's changed the way we live, the way we play, the way we work, the way we learn, the way we speak. During my time at the FCC, I've met with entrepreneurs in South Dakota who have started businesses. I've met with doctors in Ohio who have helped care for patients. I've met with teachers in Alaska who have educated their students. I've met with farmers in Missouri who have increased their crop yields. And I've met with many more who have succeeded, all because of the internet. And the internet has enriched my own life immeasurably. In the past few days alone, I have set up a FaceTime call with my parents and kids. I've downloaded interesting podcasts about blockchain technology. I've ordered a burrito. I've managed my playoff-bound fantasy football team. And, as many of you might have seen, I've tweeted. What is responsible for the phenomenal development of the internet? Well, it certainly wasn't heavy-handed government regulation. Quite to the contrary. At the dawn of the commercial internet, President Clinton and a Republican Congress agreed that it would be the policy of the United States to, and I quote, preserve the vibrant and competitive free market that presently exists for the internet, unfettered by federal and state regulation. This bipartisan policy worked. Encouraged by light touch regulation, America's private sector invested over $1.5 trillion to build out fixed and mobile networks throughout the United States. 28K modems gave way to gigabit fiber. Innovators and entrepreneurs grew startups into global giants, and America's internet economy became the envy of the entire world. And this light touch approach was good for consumers, too. In a free market full of permissionless innovation, online services blossomed. Within a generation, we have gone from email as the killer app to high-definition video streaming. Entrepreneurs and innovators guided the internet far better than the clumsy hand of government ever could have. But then, in early 2015, the FCC, under political pressure, jettisoned the successful bipartisan approach to the internet. On express orders from the previous White House, the FCC scrapped the tried and true light touch regulation of the internet and replaced it with heavy-handed micromanagement. It decided to subject the internet to utility-style regulation, designed in the 1930s to govern Ma Bell. This decision was a mistake. For one thing, there was no problem to solve. The internet wasn't broken in 2015. We were not living in some digital dystopia. To the contrary, the internet is one thing, perhaps the only thing in American society that we can all agree has been a stunning success. Not only was there no problem, this solution hasn't worked. The main complaint consumers have about the internet is not and has never been that their internet service provider is blocking access to content. It's that they don't have access at all or not enough competition. These regulations have ironically taken us in the opposite direction from these consumer preferences. Under Title II, investment in high-speed networks has declined by billions of dollars. Notably, this is the first time that such investment has declined outside of a recession in the internet era. When there is less investment, that means fewer next generation's networks are built. That means less access and less competition. That means fewer jobs for Americans building those networks. And that means more Americans are stranded on the wrong side of the digital divide. And the impact has been particularly serious for smaller internet service providers. They don't have the time, the money, or the lawyers to navigate a thicket of complex rules. Now, they don't get a lot of press, certainly not here in Washington. But I've personally visited some of them, from Spencer Municipal Utilities in Spencer, Iowa, to Wave Wireless in Parsons, Kansas. I have personally spoken with many more, from Amplex Internet in Ohio to Airlink Services in Oklahoma. And so it is no surprise that the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association, which represents very small fixed wireless companies that typically operate in rural and low-income urban areas, surveyed its members and found that over 80%, quote, incurred additional expense in complying with the Title II rules, had delayed or reduced network expansion, had delayed or reduced services, and had allocated budget to comply with the rules. Other small companies, too, have told the FCC that these regulations have forced them to cancel, delay, or curtail fiber network upgrades. And nearly 24 small providers submitted a letter saying that the FCC's heavy-handed rules affect our ability to find financing. Now remember, these are not the big guys. These are the small companies, the kinds of companies that are critical to providing a more competitive marketplace. Now these rules have also impeded innovation. One major company, for instance, reported that it put on hold a project to build out its out-of-home Wi-Fi network due to uncertainty about the FCC's regulatory stance. And a coalition of 19 municipal internet service providers, that is, city government-owned nonprofits, have told the FCC that they, and I quote, often delay or hold off from rolling out a new feature or service because they cannot afford to deal with a potential complaint and enforcement action. None of this is good for consumers. We need to empower all Americans with digital opportunity, not deny them the benefits of greater access and competition. And consider, too, that these are just the effects that these rules have had on the internet of today. Think about how they will affect the internet that we need 10, 20 years from now. The digital world bears no resemblance to a water pipe or an electric line or a sewer. The use of those pipes will be roughly constant over time. Very few would say that there's been dramatic innovation in these areas. By contrast, online traffic is exploding, and we consume exponentially more traffic and data over time. With the dawn of the Internet of Things, with the development of high bitrate applications like virtual reality, with new activities that we can't fully grasp yet, like high-volume Bitcoin mining, we are imposing ever more demands on the network. And over time, that means our networks themselves will need to scale too. On advice of security, we need to take a brief recess.
Everyone, I need everyone to leave everything that you have in place. Do not take anything out of here except for your body. Do not take any bags, any books, or anything. Only thing that leaves out of here is just your body. We will call everybody back in once we finish clearing the room. Thank you.
So guys, you're watching Fox 5 Live here inside our digital newsroom. This is obviously the vote and the final debates on this issue, but they are expected to repeal net neutrality today. It's 4-2 on the commission, and you just heard from the chairman himself. He was last. The two women on the commission are the ones that are in favor of the other side of not repealing this. Let us know what you think. Which side of the issue are you guys on? Obviously, this is relevant to you. You guys are watching on an application, YouTube probably, that possibly will be affected from this. I know we were talking about the big corporations, Verizon, the big internet service providers that are on the side of this repeal, but Google is not, and it's interesting to see that because think about it this way, Google and YouTube are, of course, linked. They own them. So anyway, it's relevant to you. I know you guys are digital people. Let us know what you think. We're told that a news conference is to follow this debate and this vote, so we're going to kind of hang out and see what we can get from this. I think it is the big talker of the day. I think it's important, and you guys seem to be engaged with it, so we're going to keep it here and then jump around to whatever other streams we have coming in today live from Capitol Hill.
I tell you what, all you camera folks, I need you to stay right here in one line. Do not move. Just stand there. You can hold your property, stay right there. Hold your property, stay right there. Everybody else is out? These guys first. These guys first. I got that.
Resolution was included as part of the continuing resolution passed last week. However, we must do more. On November 3rd, the House passed legislation to extend funding for CHIP for 5 years with the support of every Iowa representative. However, since that time, we've been waiting for our colleagues in the Senate to act. They need to act now. We must work together to fund this critical program, which has bipartisan support and bicameral support. The health of our children is at stake. Children in low and middle income families will be those hit the hardest if we do not fully fund CHIP. With Iowa families left without coverage and access to needed medical services for their children, we must act. I urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to include an extension for CHIP in the important bills we'll be considering in the weeks ahead, because families shouldn't be worrying about losing coverage for their children. So as Congress continues to work on the many important issues facing our country, I know I and other colleagues will continue to support this. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My good friend Timothy Tim Bradford passed away last week. Tim was a commissioner of the Cook County Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, but he was much more than that. Tim grew up on the west side of the city of Chicago, moved to the south suburbs, and became known as the godfather of politics in South suburban Cook County. He was in love with everybody he met, involved in everything that existed, and I simply express condolences to his wife and family on his passing, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the liberal media helped elect a U.S. Senator from Alabama. Their alliance with the Democratic Party is now so close, we should call them mediacrats. Admittedly, the mediacrats got an assist from some Republicans, as well as the candidate himself. The primary lesson to be learned from the election is that Republicans must confront media bias. They must constantly point it out and remind the American people of its corrosive effect on our election process. Republicans should join the president in exposing fake news. The media should trust the American people with the facts, not tell them what to think. Because the media are so biased, their credibility with the American people is at an all-time low. For the sake of our country and for the sake of fair elections, I hope the media will return to their paramount responsibility, providing the American people with unbiased news.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump claims he has nothing to do with Russia, but we have seen damning revelations, secret meetings, business and financial entanglements, and elaborate attempts to conceal information. In any other era, these would be bombshells, but our nonstop media cycle, fueled by Trump's constant infusions of drama, makes it hard to connect the dots. It's not that we lack evidence of Trump-Russia ties, it's that there's so much, it makes your head spin. So today I'm beginning a Moment of Truth series of speeches to point out facts that show an administration that is compromised, that not only colluded with Russia but has obstructed justice to keep us from knowing the truth. And one of many smoking guns is from 2015 when Trump's associate Felix Sater was seeking financing from a Russian bank facing American sanctions to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. This email from Sater to Trump's personal attorney speaks for itself. I'll get Putin on this program and we'll get Donald elected. There's a lot more to come, Mr. Speaker, but for now I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. Any further 1 minute? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute and to commemorate the sad 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, which took the lives of 20 innocent children and 6 brave educators. Last night, I stood on the floor of the House and indicated how breathless I felt when the news came in. 1 child, 2 children, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 children, and the brave adults that tried to save their lives, including the mother of the perpetrator. And so I rise today to join in the call for acts of kindness. Tomorrow I'll be giving out books at the Blackshear Elementary School. I'll be giving out shoes in my district to the Forest Brook Middle School. And I hope that we understand that it's not about guns don't kill, people do. Guns kill. And I would ask that we have real gun safety legislation. At the same time, I hope that as we look toward the needs of our nation, the Children's Health Insurance Program and those who are suffering from hurricanes will be part of our kindness. But I take a moment for these children. Amen. I thank you for allowing me to honor the Sandy Hook children and the brave adults that tried to save their lives. May God bless them all. I yield back.
Are there any further 1 minute requests? Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2017, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Garrett, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
"47 years ago, August 11th, a baby boy was born to a mother and father in Detroit, Michigan named Brian Terry. Some 18 years after that, Brian made a commitment to serve his country by enlisting in the United States Marine Corps, where he served 3 years honorably, including a tour of duty in harm's way in Iraq. Discharged from the Marine Corps honorably in 1994, Brian Terry followed his calling to serve by becoming a police officer. And then made another commitment, again, not to serve just his community, but our nation, as in 2007, he joined the Customs and Border Patrol. But this wasn't good enough for what his mother characterized as a brave, strong defender of people. Brian decided to join the elite border tactical team of the Border Patrol unit. And 7 years ago today, Brian was part of a 4-person team tasked with pursuing and apprehending a RIP crew. This RIP crew has been alleged to be affiliated with the Mexican drug cartels, and what they did was exploit those who took advantage of the unwillingness of those in leadership in this country to perform that basic principled responsibility, which is to secure our borders. The RIP crew would rob drug mules as they carried drugs across the border, but also routinely detain and shake down those who snuck through our porous borders. This cartel-affiliated RIP crew had weapons, and they used those weapons to rob and terrorize and exploit in the worst possible ways people who were essentially invited here by our failure to do our job. 7 years ago today, Brian Terry and 3 of his colleagues set out not just to protect our border, but to protect innocent people who came with their entire life savings because we chose to leave that border porous. Yesterday, the House Homeland Security Committee took up H.R. 4433. Thank you. I wasn't ready yet, but that's okay. H.R. 4433 is entitled Securing DHS Firearms Act of 2017. We learned during testimony on this bill that in a 2-year period, roughly 200, just over 200 firearms were stolen from people who worked for the Department of Homeland Security or lost. At least one person was killed by these firearms, and I would concur that that is unacceptable. I certainly support the bill.
Hi guys, if you are watching us here on Fox 5 Live, you're probably checking into what's going on right here. We have the House floor with the sound up. They're talking a variety of topics, including gun control right now. Also right below my face here is the inside of that room where the FCC chair just spoke, and the commission was talking about their all of their sides to this issue. Of course, it's 4-2 right now. We're expecting them to repeal net neutrality in this vote today. Now, we were just told that some canine police officers were sweeping the room. Not quite sure if that was just a normal security policy or if they did sort of recess and stop this on account of the need to sweep the room, but we're kind of finding out some more information on that. Looks like they are back in the room now, and they're going to continue with these talks and then the ultimate vote. So stay on with us for that. We're going to make sure we check in. There's the chairman himself. We're going to bring that full screen.
That our rules have had on the internet of today. Now think about how they'll affect the internet that we need 10, 20 years from now. The digital world bears no resemblance to a water pipe or electric line or sewer. The use of those pipes will be roughly constant over time, and very few would say that there's dramatic innovation in those areas. By contrast, online traffic is exploding, and with the dawn of the Internet of Things, with the development of high bitrate applications like virtual reality, with new activities we can't fully grasp yet, like high-volume Bitcoin mining, we are imposing ever more demands on the network. Over time, that means that our networks themselves will have to scale too. But they don't have to. If our rules deter the massive infrastructure investment that we need, eventually we'll pay the price in terms of less innovation. Consider these words from Ben Thompson, a highly respected technology analyst, from a post on his blog Stratechery supporting my proposal. It's an extended quote, but with your indulgence, it's important. The question that must be grappled with is whether or not the internet is done. By that I mean that today's bandwidth is all we will ever need, which means we can risk chilling investment through prophylactic regulation and the elimination of price signals that may spur infrastructure build-out. If we are done, then the potential harm of a Title II reclassification is much lower. Sure, ISPs will have to do more paperwork, but Honestly, they're just a bunch of mean monopolists anyways, right? Best to get laws in place to preserve what we have. But what if we aren't done? What if virtual reality with dual 8K displays actually becomes something meaningful? What if those imagined remote medicine applications are actually developed? What if the Internet of Things moves beyond this messy experimentation phase and into real-time value generation, not just in the home, but in all kinds of unimagined commercial applications? I certainly hope we will have the bandwidth to support all of that. I do too. And as Thompson put it in another Stratechery post, and again I quote, "The fact of the matter is there is no evidence that harm exists in the sort of systematic way that justifies heavily regulating ISPs. The evidence does suggest that current regulatory structures handle bad actors perfectly well. The only future to fear is the one we never discover, because we gave up on the approach that already has brought us so far." Now remember, folks, networks don't have to be built. Risks don't have to be taken. Capital doesn't have to be raised. The costs of Title II today may appear, at least to some, to be hidden, but the consumers and innovators of tomorrow will pay a severe price. So, what is the FCC doing today? Well, quite simply, we are restoring the light touch framework that has governed the internet for most of its existence. We are moving from Title II to Title I. Wonkier it cannot be. It is difficult to match that mundane reality to the apocalyptic rhetoric that we have heard from Title II supporters. And as the debate has gone on, their claims have gotten more and more outlandish. So let's be clear. Returning to the legal framework that governed the internet from President Clinton's pronouncement in 1996 until 2015 is not going to destroy the internet. It is not going to end the internet as we know it. It is not going to kill democracy. It is not going to stifle free expression online. If stating these propositions alone doesn't demonstrate their absurdity, our internet experience before 2015 and our internet experience tomorrow, once this order passes, will prove them so. Simply put, by returning to the light touch Title I framework, we are helping consumers and promoting competition. Broadband providers will have stronger incentives to build networks, especially in unserved areas, and to upgrade networks to gigabit speeds and 5G. This means there will be more competition among broadband providers. It also means more ways that startups and tech giants alike can deliver applications and content to more users. In short, it is a freer and more open internet. And we also promote much more robust transparency among ISPs than existed 3 years ago. We require ISPs to disclose a variety of business practices, and the failure to do so subjects them to enforcement action. This transparency rule will ensure that consumers know what they're buying and startups get the information they need as they develop new products and services. Moreover, we empower the Federal Trade Commission to ensure that consumers and competition are protected. 2 years ago, the Title II order stripped the FTC of jurisdiction over broadband providers. But today, we are putting the nation's premier consumer protection cop back on the beat. The FCC will once again have the authority to take action against internet service providers that engage in anti-competitive, unfair, or deceptive acts. As FTC Chairman Maureen Olhausen recently said, and I quote, "The FTC's ability to protect consumers and promote competition in the broadband industry isn't something new and far-fetched. We have a long-established role in preserving the values that consumers care about online." Or, as President Obama's first FTC chairman put it just yesterday, "The plan to restore FTC jurisdiction is good for consumers. The sky isn't falling, consumers will remain protected, and the internet will continue to thrive." So let's be clear. Following today's vote, Americans will still be able to access the websites they want to visit. They will still be able to enjoy the services they want to enjoy. There will still be cops on the beat guarding a free and open internet. This is the way things were prior to 2015, and this is the way they will be once again. Now, our decision today will also return regulatory parity to the internet economy. Now, some Silicon Valley platforms, giants, favor imposing heavy-handed regulations on other parts of the internet ecosystem. But all too often, they don't practice what they preach. Edge providers regularly block content that they don't like. When you go online, do you decide what news, search results, and products you see? Perhaps not. They regularly decide what you see and, perhaps more importantly, what you don't. And many thrive on the business model of charging to place content in front of eyeballs. What else is accelerated mobile pages or promoted tweets but prioritization? What is worse, there is no transparency into how decisions that appear inconsistent with an open internet are made. How does a company decide to restrict someone's accounts or block their tweets because it thinks their views are inflammatory or wrong? How does a company decide to demonetize videos from political advocates without any notice? How does a company expressly block access to websites on rival devices or prevent dissidents' content from appearing on its platform? How does a company decide to block from its app store a cigar aficionado app, apparently because the company believes that the app promotes tobacco use? You don't have any insight into any of these decisions, and neither do I. Yet these are very real, actual threats to an open internet. Ironic, coming from the very entities that claim to support it. Ironic, too, that so-called net neutrality advocates, most vigorously opposed to our reforms, have little to nothing to say about these threats. These are omissions, these are threats that a growing number of officials, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, are beginning to take notice of. Now look, perhaps certain companies support saddling broadband providers with heavy-handed regulations because those rules work to their economic advantage. I don't blame them for taking that position. And I'm not saying that these same rules should be slapped on them too. What I am saying is that it is not the job of the government to be in the business of picking winners and losers in the internet economy. We should have a level playing field and let consumers decide who prevails. Now, many words have been spoken during this debate.
So, guys, this is the chairman here of the FCC talking about this issue, continuing this vote here in Capitol Hill. This, on the right corner of your screen now, is Santa Clara County officials. They're talking about this same issue, the FCC's decision, which is likely to go in that way to repeal net neutrality. So we're going to kind of hear both sides and jump into this press conference right here that's going on in Santa Clara County in California.
Sheriff Lori Smith will discuss some of the challenges to public safety from the repeal of net neutrality.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. This is a very, very important issue, especially as it applies to law enforcement. Over the past few years, the Sheriff's Office has developed internet-based solutions that really help our deputies and the community investigate and criminal activity and really protect the residents of our county. These tools allow us to communicate and collaborate with other law enforcement agencies, other state departments, and other county departments. The Sheriff's Office also utilizes this internet-based system to notify the public of public safety hazards and to protect the notification systems that we use throughout the county. The Sheriff's Office and county residents require access to an open and free internet to broadcast and receive vital law enforcement information. The FCC's repeal of the net neutrality rules threatens public safety and many, many other services that we provide to you for the protection of the community. And I'd like to turn the podium over now to County Health Officer Dr. Sarah Cody, and she'll talk about this ruling today that we anticipate and the impact on public health.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Sarah Cody. I'm the county's public health officer as well as public health director, and I just wanted to share a little bit of information with you today. As you know, the public health department is responsible for the health of the entire community, all 1.9 million residents living in our county. We're responsible for the prevention and control of the spread of infectious diseases, as well as mitigating public health emergencies. As part of this responsibility, we are responsible for alerting and mobilizing medical and public health resources and providers so that they may respond to any public health emergency or situation. And to do this, we rely on web-based technology to communicate. The dissemination of information about public health emergencies or situations to county residents is also important, and the residents of our community rely on our website to get this information during a public health emergency or other public health event. The FCC's repeal of the net neutrality rules threatens our ability to communicate vital information to county residents, medical and public health providers, and in some, it poses a threat to the public health of our community. And I'm now going to turn the podium back over to Supervisor Simitian, who will take it from here. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for being here today, and again, I want to underscore this was a unanimous decision by our County Board of Supervisors. Every member of the board voted to support this effort by our county to push back on the repeal of net neutrality. These issues of blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization are perhaps new jargon, new language for a lot of folks here in the county, but the questions, and I think the answers, are really very simple. Should internet service
that allow licensees to rely on the statutory definitions of those terms to identify the nature and regulatory treatment of their mobile services consistent with applicable service rules? Eliminating 20.7 and 20.9 will reduce disparate regulatory treatment of similar services in different frequency bands. It will allow licensees to offer a variety of services rapidly in response to consumer demands and competitive forces, and it will help
Guys, we'll jump back live to the Hill for this vote. As you can see, lots of people have opinions on this all over the nation. It's a big deal today, so we're going to jump back into the heart of it, which is the actual vote as they speak about it here. Now, our reporter, Tom Fitzgerald, is there in case we can get some more info from him. If anything does happen, we'll make sure we can grab him on the phone or Skype in with him if possible. But for now, let's listen in as they continue to talk about this debate and then vote.
If the cameras were to look at the rear of the room. If the topic of Part 20 of the Commission's rules were introduced at the average American dinner table, it might go over as well as a serving of Rocky Mountain oysters. Neither would be warmly received at my home.
Man, that's just wrong. I mean, even we have limits here, Commissioner.
Okay. The changes proposed in this order, coupled with the majority's dismantling of the open internet, you knew it would end soon, have many unsavory implications for the future of competition policy. You're wondering how I was going to tie that in, right? As I made clear in my statement opposing the rollback of our open internet rules, I believe the proper interpretation of Section 332 of the Communications Act is that mobile broadband internet access service should be classified as a commercial mobile radio service, or CMRS, not a private mobile radio service. Eliminating our current Part 20 rules means we will remove precedent and procedures that could help parties demonstrate that a wireless company's mobile broadband service should be classified as CMRS. I understand that some may see this as a mere streamlining of commission rules, but in my opinion, this order removes important procedural safeguards, such as requiring the commission to put certain applications out on public notice, which can help inform parties who are interested in challenging a company's claim that its mobile broadband internet access services should be classified as a private mobile radio service. And since that result is inconsistent with my view of proper classification for mobile broadband services, I respectfully dissent from the order and will admit my first example might have been a little edgy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. Commissioner Riley.
Thank the staff for the work, no statement.
Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. The United States leads the world in wireless. One of the reasons for this success is the FCC's decision to embrace a flexible use policy for spectrum. Instead of mandating that a particular
It's an emotional topic.
Choked up on this one. Instead of mandating that a particular spectrum band be used with a specific type of wireless technology or service, we generally leave that choice to the private sector, which has a much better sense of consumer demand. This approach has enabled wireless networks in the U.S. to evolve with technology and to do so much more quickly than if operators had to obtain government sign-off at each step of the way. Our leadership in 4G is just one example of how this policy has worked to benefit consumers. Today, we carry that approach forward by eliminating 20-year-old rules that reflect a different approach to spectrum, one that required providers operating in particular spectrum bands to obtain FCC permission before innovating or bringing certain services to the market. This change will not only help level the regulatory playing field for wireless providers, but it will also result in more timely and efficient use of spectrum. The flexibility we provide today will be particularly important as we look to extend our global leadership in wireless as 5G and Internet of Things offerings continue to come online. I support the order and hope that we can continue the agency's efforts to identify and eliminate outdated and unnecessary regulatory burdens. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rosenbristle.
Well, in the interest of moving this along, I will say that I support today's decision. It does not in any way alter the statutory definitions of CMRS or PMRS, nor does it affect the underlying regulatory obligations associated with those services, and that is why it has my full support.
Thank you, Commissioner. I too support the item, as you might guess. This is as common sense and good government measure as you will find, and it simply finalizes the proposal that we unanimously adopted just last year. So without further ado, I want to thank the staff for their work to help us modernize these rules to get us to this point. In particular, thanks to Jessica Ruffenius, Kathy Harris, Roger Noel, Tom Reed, Jennifer Salas, and Peter Trachtenberg from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Jennifer Gilsonen and Carl Kinsinger from the International Bureau, Jim Bradshaw from the Media Bureau, Christine Fargetstein from the Wireline Competition Bureau, Michael Connolly and Michael Wilhelm from the Public Safety Bureau, Channa Wilkerson from the Office of Communication Business Opportunities, and David Horowitz and Anjali Singh from the Office of General Counsel. We'll now proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Clyburn?
Nay.
Commissioner Riley?
Aye.
Commissioner Carr?
Aye.
Commissioner Rosenbristle?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. The item is adopted with editorial privileges granted as requested. Great work by everybody. Thanks. Madam Secretary, could you please take us to the next item on today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the sixth item on your agenda will be presented by the Media Bureau and is entitled Electronic Delivery of Cable and Satellite Communications, Modernization of Media Regulation Initiative. Michelle Carey, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thanks, Madam Secretary. Ms. Carey, whenever your team's ready, go for it.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners.
Afternoon.
As part of our Modernization of Media Regulation Initiative, the Media Bureau presents a notice of proposed rulemaking that addresses ways to modernize rules that require multi-channel video programming distributors to provide written notifications to their subscribers, as well as rules that require broadcast television stations to send carriage election notices via certified mail. Joining me at the table are Martha Heller and Maria Malarkey from the Media Bureau. Maria will present the item.
Great.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am pleased to present this notice of proposed rulemaking that proposes to modernize rules that require multi-channel video programming distributors to provide written information to their subscribers about various topics in ways that would better comport with today's technology, would be more convenient for subscribers, and would be less burdensome for such entities. The notice proposes to adopt a rule that would allow cable operators to deliver various types of general written communications to subscribers by email, subject to certain consumer safeguards. The notice tentatively...
the way these challenges work of this type of administrative action. So,
okay.
Yeah, so...
All the way to the Ninth Circuit already, or D.C. Circuit?
Well, we don't know which Court of Appeals it will end up in. Because what will happen is all the cases get consolidated. There may be multiple filings, we anticipate, and then they will pick a court. So it could be the D.C. Circuit, it could be the Ninth, it could be somewhere else.
I think that it was either you or Mr. Is it Simidian?
Yes, Supervisor Simidian, yeah.
Mentioned that you're going to have, well, and you just mentioned that you're going to have partners on this. Have you already talked to other entities?
Well, we're working very directly with the Stanford Law School's Intellectual Property Innovation Clinic. But we absolutely expect that there are other consumer groups that are interested. We have a different angle. We're home of Silicon Valley. We also are very, very concerned about the services that you heard discussed, our public safety services, fire services, alerting services that depend on free and open access to the internet. And what's interesting is a lot of those services that governmental entities like the county use are actually have been proffered by startups, by small companies that that don't have the kind of heft that maybe a Google or an Apple would to make the kind of payments to a Comcast or AT&T to ensure full free access. And that's why we're really concerned, because these small entities that are really innovating in the government space, that are providing these very important and useful tools for public safety, public health, they could be severely jeopardized by any attempt to have blocking, throttling, or pay prioritization.
Not the county would pay. Let's say this happens. Not the county would pay Comcast and AT&T and so on.
Well, we don't know exactly what the rules. Right. We don't know what exactly the ISPs will choose to do, but I don't think we have to guess that they're going to act in their self-interest and do what maximizes revenue for them. So presumably, I think a good analogy is what airlines have done in deregulation, charging a fee here, charging a fee there. There's a fee if you want to get a seat. There's a fee if you want to bring baggage. There's a fee for everything now. I think that's what we're going to see come to fruition for internet access, which is everybody's going to get charged some fee, whether it's the county or these small startups or anyone else. And that's going to severely limit innovation, limit the free flow of information. And when we need access to information from the community or doing alerting or other emergency activities, we just can't have that kind of traffic blocked or slowed or in the slow lane when something else is in the fast lane.
Okay. So the legal basis again for this?
Just
look this way when you.
the FCC is an independent regulatory commission, and so it has to act based on reasoned decision making, based on articulated facts, not just based on change in administration. And so under the Administrative Procedure Act, those decisions have to be grounded in fact and reason, and our challenge is going to be that they have not done that. They have not met that burden. This flip-flop from just a few years ago is arbitrary and capricious.
And you said this goes to the Court of Appeals directly?
Yes, this will go directly. These kinds of cases get consolidated and they're directly heard by the Court of Appeals.
So Joe Simitian just announced at the end of this press conference that the FCC went ahead and rolled back net neutrality.
Yes.
What's your first thing you're going to do right now? What's the task at hand?
Well, the first thing my team is going to do is we're going to go and look and see what additional comments were made on the record so that we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed. But this is a terrible decision for Americans. This is really a huge threat to the internet as we know it. And the internet as we know it has been an engine of so much innovation, has been such an economic driver, and has been really important for even the county in providing services to our community.
It's only been net neutrality has only been in effect for a couple of years, but the way the internet changes so quick, technology changes quick, you've obviously implemented a lot of things in those couple of years. Is that what your fear is?
Absolutely.
What was there before?
We've launched an incredible number of cloud-based and open access services that are predicated on the net neutrality rules. The internet has evolved so quickly, and all of those kinds of services are in jeopardy. And like I mentioned a bit earlier, a lot of these services are provided by small entities working in the government space that really are not going to be able to push back against Comcast, AT&T, and other internet service providers.
Thank you. Can I just get your name again and spelling and title?
James Williams. I'm the county counsel for the county of Santa Clara, and it's spelled like it normally would be.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you so much.
Can you give me an example?
I'm going to follow Peter. Just to jump in on something.
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples.
Of course, it's funny. I listen to you guys all the time. I know the names. I know the voices better than the names.
I'm
Dave,
surrounded.
how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Let me get to the side.
Okay. Come right. Come on in here close. Oh, Peter, there you go. Okay. All right. And
when you're ready, I'm good when you're ready. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Was it?
Do you want one of these guys to hold
No, I got it. Thank you, though.
Because they could have been stars.
So first of all, give me a sense of what exactly what systems you use that could be endangered by this.
We use such a huge number of tools that are internet-based, communicating with other agencies, criminal history information, armed and dangerous information. Our deputies really have great tools now that they haven't had in the past. And when we need to access information, it really needs to be done quickly.
So how do you think the decision has now been made? What's your first reaction?
Yeah, I just heard that they did vote to repeal it, and my first reaction is fear of the unknown. We don't know how it will impact, but we know that if there is a special dispensation for public safety, that may not protect our residents. They may not have access to us like they have in the past. But it's what is going to happen, what is the reason behind it. If you look at what the push was, you can almost reach a logical conclusion that there will be an impact on us and certainly members of the public.
As the system has changed so quick, obviously a couple of years ago when this went into effect, you didn't have a lot of what you have today in line.
Everything changes so quickly. What we're able to do online now is tremendous, especially with linking other agencies, not only throughout California, but actually many states throughout the nation. We can do that from our patrol cars now. That wasn't there in the past. And it's such a benefit to law enforcement. I think it protects our people and really protects the public.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks.
Does this affect emergency alerts?
You know, and that probably will. It may, if it impacts it on our end, yes, it'll impact us, but will the people on the outside be able to receive the alerts like they have been done in the past? That's really critical. We need to be able to communicate quickly with our public, and people are using the internet more than anything else. When's the last time you had a phone conversation versus a text with someone under 30? So, okay, thanks. Did I say anything true?
So we're continuing to cover this topic, guys, as they're talking to officials in Santa Clara County in California. And then below my face here in the left corner of your screen is the commission itself. You can see Jessica Rosenworcel on the end there, one of the two people, one of two women that voted against this repeal. It just passed, of course, giving more power to telecom providers and essentially taking it away from some of the other companies like Netflix, Reddit, Etsy. So you're hearing some comment from these Santa Clara officials and then also taking an inside look at that room where the vote just took place. And Iran, I see you have some comments for us in the chat, so thank you for telling us your side of it. Everybody else, let us know what you think about this as you are watching it. I know we've been covering it for most of the morning, most of the day, but it pretty much is what we are focusing on today and what is sort of the big news of today. And it's really relevant to people like you and me, right? We're on digital, we're bringing you this via a digital application. And so it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. So do let us know what you think. And we'll check into some more comment here, some more opinion as we follow this story. And we continue to get some more news in about it. All right, we're going to go from here, guys. Thanks for watching us and stay on with us for more live coverage.
I can speak most clearly to the public health and what web-based technologies we use and we rely on, because our job in public health is to protect the health of all residents of the county, which means, you know, being on top of outbreaks of infectious disease, being on top of knowing when there's a public health emergency and when we need to mount a response. And we rely on web-based technologies for all of that because that's how we mobilize people and communicate with them.
What about for doctors in the county?
For doctors in the county, from the public health perspective, we, for example, if there's an issue of concern in the county, we'll issue a health alert. We are just transitioning actually to a web-based technology to push out those health alerts. And then we also drive people back to our website for more technical information or detailed data. And it's really important that people are able to get there quickly, to get what they need, and to take the actions that we recommend.
You don't believe you'll go away from this web-based system, even regardless of this ruling, correct?
No. What other alternate modes are there to provide detailed, reliable, and up-to-date information to the public? And that's our job.
Do you think there's going to be any kind of fail-safe to keep public health from experiencing any kind of slowdown that the or any other agencies a slowdown on the internet?
Well, I think the issue is that sometimes we don't know the moment when we're going to need to assure the public that they can reach us very quickly with information. Right? Sometimes something happens, and you can't. It's not as though you can give time to say, could you turn it up on Tuesday? We're really going to need our web to be working well, right? We need it there all the time. It's a tool that we need to ensure that we can communicate quickly and effectively with the public.
Anything else, guys?
Just name and spelling for the.
My name is Dr. Sarah Cody, first name S-A-R-A, last name C-O-D-Y. I am both a county health officer and the director of public health.
Give me any more detail about actually what you use that could be affected or you will.
So we are just adopting a web-based technology so that we can rapidly communicate with providers. So for example, we issue health alerts, health advisories, and health updates, kind of 3 levels of urgency. Sometimes they have, we both
review of both the cap and discount. First, the notice takes a fresh look at the Commission's prior conclusion that it has the legal authority to modify or eliminate the national cap and UHF discount. Second, the notice asks whether the cap and discount should be modified or eliminated in light of increased video programming options for consumers, technological developments since the Commission adopted the current cap, or other factors. If the UHF discount is eliminated, the notice asks whether the cap should be simultaneously raised, and if so, by how much. Additionally, the notice seeks comment on the benefits and costs of lowering the cap. The notice next asks whether the national cap continues to serve the public interest, and if so, what public interest goals, such as localism, continue to justify a cap. The notice also asks whether retaining a cap harms the public interest in any way. The notice also seeks comment on how to calculate compliance with the national audience reach cap if one is retained. The original technical justification for the UHF discount, that analog UHF signals generally provided less coverage than VHF signals, disappeared with the transition to digital broadcasting. Therefore, the notice asks whether there are other reasons to retain the UHF discount, or whether some other weighting method or discount should be used to calculate compliance with any remaining ownership limit. Finally, to the extent any change the Commission adopts causes broadcast station groups to become out of compliance with ownership limits, the notice asks whether such non-compliant station groups should be grandfathered and whether such station groups should subsequently be allowed to be transferred without divestitures. The Media Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt the notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges to make any necessary technical or conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lanier. We will now proceed to comments from the bench. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. Television, like newspapers and like radio, works best when it speaks with many voices. And as these companies swallow one another up, there is the frightening possibility of it all speaking with one voice. I didn't do that justice. Television, like newspapers and like radio, works best when it speaks with many voices. And as these companies swallow one another up, there is the frightening possibility of it all speaking with one voice. Those sage words delivered by broadcast journalist Linda Ellerby in 2000 ring true today. In any other month, a proposal giving massive media companies the chance to have an even greater share of the local programming market would generate substantial attention and widespread public concerns. While admittedly this is not your typical month at the FCC, the reality is that such a proposal is before us for consideration, and it is a big deal with substantial implications for the future of localism, diversity, and competition. Broadcasters are intricately you know what I mean. Broadcasters are intricately woven in the fabric of our local communities. They cover local officials and, when at their best, hold them accountable. While cable news or online platforms are more likely to paint broad strokes, local broadcasters distinguish themselves through their ability to fill in the fine lines. Local broadcasters often go through great lengths to stay on the air during a natural or man-made crisis, providing on-the-ground coverage when news breaks, including the delivery of emergency information that no doubt has saved countless lives. In 2004, Congress passed and President George W. Bush signed into law a provision that no single broadcaster, through its combination of local stations owned, collectively should be able to reach more than 39% of the U.S. television households. While I cannot say for certain that the sentiments expressed by the late William Safire reflected the legislative mood of the day, it is striking that 14 years ago he was motivated to write, through a New York Times op-ed, the effect of the media's march to amalgamation of America's freedom of voice is too worrisome to be left to 3 unelected commissioners. Soon after, Congress, through Section 629(1), subsection 1 of the Appropriations Act of 2004, specifically exempted the 39% cap on national audience reach from review. This was evidently the prevailing view because in 2004, NAB President Edward Fitz said, "We're pleased the national television ownership cap issue appears to be resolved by the passage of this legislation." Press accounts at the time, including a January 2004 story in Broadcasting and Cable, affirmed that one of the few features of the law was that, quote, only Congress, not the FCC, can change the 39% limit. Facing a challenge from broadcasters who sought to maintain a 45% national ownership cap, the Third Circuit issued its opinion in June of 2004. In the court's decision, it wrote, "Because the commission is under a statutory directive to modify the national television ownership cap to 39%, challenges to the commission's decision to raise the cap to 45% are moot. This decision should have once and for all put to rest any question that the FCC could independently increase the cap. But no, the current administration, in its quest to greenlight even greater media consolidation, has found a way to rewrite history and ignore the Third Circuit decision. Earlier this year, over my vociferous objection, the FCC majority reinstated the UHF discount, giving the blessing for a single company to reach over 70% of the U.S. households while claiming to be compliant with the 39.
If you guys are still on with us, thanks for hanging out with us today on the Fox 5 live stream. We're obviously inside the room where the FCC just voted on net neutrality. That's really been the big subject, the big topic of the day. Hope that you've enjoyed that coverage. Now we have sort of an inside look at some of the other matters they're bringing to the table. We're supposed to be getting the White House press briefing coming up next. That will be live from inside the briefing room at the White House, and that should be very shortly, we're told, in the next few minutes. So hopefully we do get an inside look there, and we can bring that to you to kind of cap it out and close out our show. And then we'll give you a little teaser as to what to expect tomorrow if you're going to come on with us. If you are a regular subscriber, thanks for joining us and for communicating with us and engaging on our chat. We want to see you hopefully tomorrow for our special show that is going to be tracking our Make-A-Wish kid, partnering up with the Make-A-Wish Foundation to make one child's wish come true for this holiday season. So we're really excited about that. It's going to be a different show for tomorrow. It's going to be really jam-packed with some fun and interesting stuff. So we'll continue on with this story and kind of give you an inside look here, and then we're going to go over to the White House when we get that source in. And if you're just joining us, jump on the chat so I can see where you are and what you're thinking about and where you're watching from. And then we'll pop over there, and then we'll come back into the newsroom for a little conclusion. All right, we'll see you then.
The issue, and there were bipartisan House and Senate resolutions introduced that disapproved of the FCC's deregulation of the media ownership rules. There were also multiple congressional hearings that year. Senator Trent Lott, in describing his opposition to raising the cap, said, and I quote, that the nation is in danger of losing the localism and diversity of viewpoints that are offered under the current ownership cap structure if the current cap is raised, end quote. Strong words from the former Senate leader, and he was not alone. A deeply fought battle ultimately resulted in a compromise between congressional leadership and the White House. That November, an agreement was reached that a 39% national ownership cap was established that will be put into law just 2 months later. While many remained unhappy, the purpose was to put this debate to rest, or so they thought. Fast forward to last month, when Democratic leader Pelosi, along with Representatives Pallone and Doyle, wrote in a letter to the commission that by explicitly excluding review of the cap from the congressionally mandated quadrennial review of broadcast ownership rules, we made clear that the FCC is not permitted to change or evade the national ownership cap. I agree. Localism, diversity, and competition are bedrock principles of our national media policy and indeed our democracy. Giving a single broadcaster the means to buy up enough local stations to exceed the 39% cap is inconsistent with the statute and should be rejected. FCC Chairman Michael Powell once said that the FCC is constitutionally bound to comply willingly or not with Congress's direction as expressed by the text of the statute. Maybe today will be the day the majority will heed those words and join me in opposing today's proposal, because if nothing else is clear when it comes to this item, it is that we, the FCC, has absolutely no authority to act. I dissent.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support today's item, which initiates a defined process to review the Commission's National Television Multiple Ownership Rule, commonly referred to as the National Audience Reach Cap. This is a topic I've spent too much time over the years working on, so I'd like to clear up many of the misconceptions surrounding it. First, I want to be absolutely clear on my position on the matter. As I've stated previously, I do not believe the Commission has the authority to modify the National Audience Reach Cap, which also extends to eliminating the UHF discount. Well, the discount may no longer be technologically justified. It is up to Congress to make that determination, not the Commission. This was the clear intent of Congress when it partially rolled back the FCC's proposed cap increase of 45% in 2004. While many lawyers have their own interpretations of the 2004 Consolidated Appropriation Acts, I want to provide a little history. After extensive debate and too many meetings to count, Congress enacted the relevant portions of the CAA. The language in the law cannot be any clearer. It statutorily sets the national ownership limit and correspondingly removes it from the quadrennial review under Section 202H of the Telecommunications Act. Some, including the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, have argued that Congress only meant to remove consideration of the national audience reach cap from the biennial review, not to prohibit it from being changed as part of any other effort. But such a reading is preposterous, as it would effectively create one of the biggest backdoors in the history of legislating. At the same time, the view ignores the deal that was struck in those bitterly heated member meetings and huddles. In exchange for the hard cap, those who supported former Chairman Powell's work obtained an ownership level that prevented any station group from being forced to sell off any stations, and a commitment that the UHF discount would still apply going forward. I realize that some people don't have a high opinion of congressional experience, but I will forever have etched in my mind former Ted Stevens screaming that if some station group wanted to go above 39%, they could come to Congress and try to get the cap amended. That was a different day and a different Congress, and maybe it relied on Senator Stevens serving forever. but it should not. It should count for something. It certainly does to me, even if I intellectually agree that both the cap and discount are archaic and in need of reform. Despite my firsthand experiences, there is broad disagreement among interested parties over the Commission's authority in the space. During the prior Commission's proceeding to eliminate the UHF discount, NAB and Free Press argued that the Commission had the authority to both eliminate the UHF discount and modify the national audience reach cap. The Commission ultimately agreed, with the support of a couple of my colleagues here today. On the other hand, Fox, Sinclair, ION, and Trinity Broadcast Network all challenged the Commission's authority. I appreciate the irony that my views are aligned with those previously filed by Sinclair, who outside critics mistakenly believe I am currently in cahoots with, that the Commission was devoid of authority to take action, as fate would have it, supposedly would help Sinclair today. Specifically, Sinclair stated in 2013, the FCC does not have authority to modify any aspect of the national television ownership cap, including the UHF discount. In establishing the 39% limit for the ownership cap in 2004, Congress set a precise limit and then took the extra step of removing this limit and any rule relating it from the FCC's periodic review of its ownership rules. No action by Congress has changed these facts, and accordingly, the FCC should terminate this proceeding and halt its efforts to eliminate the UHF discount. In a perhaps more curious twist, it appears that my same colleagues that previously supported changes in 2016 also now question the Commission's authority. For these reasons, I believe it's time for the courts to opine on this matter. We need certainty in a way that only the courts or Congress can provide as to where the Commission authority begins and ends. Since it doesn't appear congressional action is forthcoming, I look forward to reviewing the record that will result from this proceeding. If the Commission believes after such review that it has the authority to modify the cap, I will happily support that item. That is not to suggest my position has changed, but only that I believe in getting to finality and willing to cast a vote that will allow the Commission to take the needed steps to get this to court review. Second, outside the authority question, I think it's important to put this order in context. The truth is, the last fight over the national audience reach cap generally occurred not because of its potential impact on consumers, but rather to safeguard an important balance between the big four broadcast networks and their local affiliates. Prior to the congressional action in 2004, the Commission found that these rules did not promote competition or diversity. For these reasons, the Commission increased the current cap from 35% to 45% to allow broadcast networks to achieve greater economies of scale without surpassing the audience reach of their collective affiliates. Congress later scaled back this to 39% with the same focus in mind, maintaining the appropriate balance between networks and their affiliates. It's also worth noting that even if the national audience reach cap is increased or eliminated, the practical effect will likely be limited, assuming the Commission complies with congressional direction on the UHF discount. Today, the majority of the top 10 television stations do not even come close to the cap. For instance, CBS Corporation, which ranks 5th, only has a national audience reach of 25.5%. Hearst Corporation, at 10th, has an audience reach of 13.3%. All this is to say, well, I support asking questions and ultimately resolving this issue of the Commission's authority on the matter. Whether we maintain or alter the cap is likely to have little real-world impact in the near future. I thank the Chairman for teeing up this item and asking the broad range of questions. I will approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. Since the 1940s, the FCC has had rules on the books that limit the number of television stations any single entity can own. Over the decades, as the media landscape has evolved, the Commission has revisited these rules to account for new competitors and advances in technology. Those changes have only accelerated in recent years with the advent of online offerings. Broadcasters now compete for eyeballs with YouTube stars, social media platforms, and streaming services like Hulu and Netflix, not to mention traditional cable and satellite offerings. In light of these changes, I'm glad that we're launching this proceeding, which will examine whether we can and should modify our rules that limit broadcasters, but not others, in the video marketplace from reaching more than 39% of television households in the country. Answering these questions will help ensure that our media ownership rules are neither outdated nor counterproductive. And at the same time, I'm surprised that the issue of the Commission's legal authority in this area has generated so much controversy. After all, the FCC determined in 2016 that, quote, the Commission has the authority to modify the national audience reach cap. Continuing, the Commission found that, quote, no statute bars the Commission from revisiting the cap. Congress did not, according to the FCC, quote, impose a statutory national audience reach cap or prohibit the Commission from evaluating the elements.
All right, guys, just got word that the White House press briefing is going to start, so we're going to bring that to you live. You can see it right now, right corner of your screen. We'll go there right when it starts, but for now, just this inside look at the FCC Commission. This is after the vote that you guys witnessed. It was live. We had it on our stream the whole time. If you have any more thoughts or comments on it, please do add them to the chat, and we can kind of talk about it, and then we'll jump into the briefing as well. Then we'll come back in and chat a little more about tomorrow, tomorrow's special stream, special show for you.
2016 is curious, to say the least. Today's notice asks simply whether my colleagues got it right in 2016 when they determined that the FCC has authority to modify the cap. So far, I've not seen anything that convinces me they got it wrong. But I look forward to reviewing the record as it develops in this proceeding. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Carr. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
For decades, the FCC has built its media policies around the ideas that localism, diversity, and competition matter. These values have their origin in the Communications Act. They may not be trendy, but they have stood the test of time. They continue to support journalism and jobs. They play a critical role in helping advance the mix of facts we all need to make decisions about our lives, our communities, and our country. Today, the FCC seeks to dismantle these values. At a time when real facts get casually derided as fake news, algorithms are ascendant, and what is viral is often not verifiable. This is neither prudent nor wise. It is also unlawful. At the direction of Congress in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2004, the FCC is statutorily prohibited from allowing a single company from acquiring stations that reach more than 39% of the national television audience. The FCC lacks authority to change this law. Doing so is the exclusive province of Congress. But somehow, some way, we have this rulemaking anyway. And somehow we are still talking about the UHF discount, a concept that should have been retired nearly a decade ago with the introduction of digital television, which rendered it technically outdated and scientifically obsolete. Moreover, this concept is nowhere mentioned in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2004. Still, here we are. And this effort, on the heels of this agency's repeal of the main studio rule, elimination of the 8 voices test, and giving the green light for waivers of common ownership of the top 4 stations in a market, is ultimately destructive. We are destroying our most basic values and tearing apart the rules that have helped keep our media markets local, diverse, and competitive. I dissent.
Thank you, Commissioner. The national television ownership cap and the UHF discount are inextricably linked. Any review of one must include a review of the other. What is the FCC's authority to adjust this cap? And assuming we have such authority, how should we adjust it? Should we eliminate the UHF discount? Those are the key questions we are asking in this notice. There are no tentative conclusions whatsoever. We are just asking. It is amusing then to hear such vociferous objections from this bench, including in the last few minutes, quote, we have absolutely no authority to act, and, I quote, the FCC lacks authority to change this law. Such objections are simply asking the question whether we have authority, given that the same commissioners previously answered it in the affirmative. In 2013, the FCC adopted the UHF discount notice of proposed rulemaking, which stated, and I quote, we believe the Commission retains the authority to modify both the national audience reach restriction and the UHF discount provided such action is undertaken in a rulemaking proceeding separate from the Commission's quadrennial review of the broadcast ownership rules. Today's minority expressed nary a doubt about that belief back then. And just last year, 2016, the FCC converted that belief into bedrock. It definitively, and I quote, concluded that it has the authority to modify the national audience reach cap, including the authority to revise or eliminate the UHF discount. And it went even further, stating the Communications Act does, and I quote, not impose a statutory national audience reach cap or prohibit the Commission from evaluating the elements of this rule. Yet again, the current minority voted wholeheartedly for that proposition. Now, look, I understand the literary appeal of Oscar Wilde's dictum that consistency is the last refuge of the unimaginative. But our work typically demands a modicum of consistency.
30 on the administration's efforts to reduce red tape and federal regulations. Within 10 days of taking office, President Trump issued Executive Order 13771, instructing the Office of Management and Budget to remove 2 government regulations for every new one created. Washington scoffed, but the administration acted. In under a year, we have unleashed the American economy, businesses, and job creation. These efforts and the rest of the president's agenda have fueled economic growth, including all-time highs in the stock market, a 17-year low in unemployment rolls, new highs in manufacturing and consumer confidence, and much more. As the president said yesterday, we're at the final stages of historic tax cuts and reforms that will provide massive relief to middle-class families, lower tax rates on American businesses to make us more competitive, and make our tax code simpler and fairer for the first time in decades. We want to begin lowering the tax bills in Americans' paychecks starting next year, where Americans who face economic headwinds for 8 years will have the wind at their backs as they seek the American dream. And with that, we'll get started because we are on a short time frame, and I will take your questions. Jonathan.
Sarah, on the taxes, what is the president's message to those Americans, including some in the middle class, who will face tax increases under this tax bill?
Look, our focus since day one has been to aggressively push to make sure as many Americans as possible get a tax break, particularly those in the middle class. That's going to continue to be our focus as we continue in this process, as I've said time and time again.
But the message to those that will face an increase, I mean, every analysis shows some people, including middle-class Americans, are going to face an increase.
And overwhelmingly, the middle class will get a huge tax break, as most Americans will. And that is, again, is our goal, is to make sure that more Americans see more of their hard-earned money. That's what we're pushing for. That's what we're going to keep working with the House and Senate to make sure happens. John?
On taxes, you've got 2 no's in the Senate so far. You've got Senator Corker, who's been a no for a while. Senator Rubio came out and told us a short time ago that he's a no unless he can get an expansion of the child tax credit. Is the president willing to be a little more generous in the child tax credit in order to get Senator Rubio's vote?
Look, we're really proud of the work that we've done already up until this point with Senator Rubio, already doubling the child tax credit, taking it to $2,000 per child. We're going to continue working with the senator, but we think we've made great strides and frankly, pretty historic movement in terms of the child tax credit. We're very proud of that work. We're going to keep working with them until we get the job done, which we still expect to happen before the end of the year.
Is there more room to move?
Right now, we're going to focus on letting some of the Senate move forward in the progression of their conversations. Again, we're extremely excited about the progress that we've already made to double the child tax credit. I think that's something important to note, and something that we've worked very closely with Senator Rubio on, and we think he should be very excited about the progress we've made on that front. Connie? Merry Christmas to you as well.
What have you learned this past year? What changes would you make coming year?
What have I learned this past year? I would have to say that we would be here a really long time if I walked through everything I've learned this past year. But some of my favorite things would probably be to take time to appreciate some of the really incredible moments and the special time and opportunity and honor that certainly that I have, but I think that all of us have, that we get to come to the White House every day, serve our country, and we get to call it work. I think that's pretty impressive, pretty amazing, and something that I hope none of us ever lose sight of. Thanks, Connie. Maura.
Thank you, Sarah. Does the president think that Roy Moore should concede? In other words, does he believe he lost the election fair and square, or does he think he was the victim of widespread illegitimate voting?
I think the president's position is pretty clear in his outreach to Doug Jones directly. He called and they spoke yesterday. They had a great conversation, a very positive conversation. He likes Doug Jones and looks forward to meeting him in person and hopes that he will come and follow through on his commitment to work with the president on some things that they agree on. Jordan?
Lost fair and square, that's what you're saying.
I think the numbers reflect that, and I think the president's outreach shows that. Jordan?
Thanks, Sarah. There's some reports out this morning that Speaker Ryan is considering stepping down at the end of this Congress. Has the president spoken to Speaker Ryan about those reports, and does he want to see Speaker Ryan continue in that role?
The president did speak to the speaker not too long ago and made sure that the speaker knew very clearly and in no uncertain terms that if that news was true, he was very unhappy with it. The speaker assured the president that those were not accurate reports and that they look forward to working together for a long time to come. Blake?
So did this catch the president by surprise, the Ryan report that was out today?
It sounds like it may have caught Speaker Ryan by surprise because I don't think it was very accurate reporting. And so it sounds like they're both committed to and looking forward to spending a lot more time together over the next, hopefully 7-8 years.
And let me ask you about Marco Rubio as well. We have heard folks who might be no votes, potentially undecided votes, but Marco Rubio's potential no vote is one that we know he had concerns, but him voting no is seemingly here suddenly out of left field. Has that caught the White House by surprise at all, or have you braced for the possibility that you might not have Marco Rubio in your corner?
I'm not sure if the president's spoken with him specifically today. Again, we're proud of the work that we've done with Senator Rubio, and we look forward to making sure that the progress that we made to double the child care tax credit, that's kind of a mouthful, goes into full effect when this piece of legislation is signed. April?
There are two things. Should Roy Moore just give his concession speech now versus holding it out?
It probably sounds like it should have already taken place. Look, the president's already called and congratulated Doug Jones and expressed his willingness to work with him and to meet with him when he arrives in Washington.
And the second issue, did you watch GMA this morning, and what are your thoughts about this tell-all and the uncomfortability of Omarosa while she was here, some issues?
I did see some clips of that in terms of a tell-all. That's a question I think you would have to ask her. She resigned from her position yesterday. She'll be here later this afternoon. We put out a statement. I don't have any changes to add to that, and certainly, as has been the practice in the past and will continue to be in the future, we don't comment much further than that on personnel matters. Chip?
Sarah, why is if she's resigned and she is going to
sitting next to each other.
if she's resigned, but you said she will stay on, Omarosa will stay on through January 20th. Why are the taxpayers continuing to pay her salary for another month if she's no longer here at the White House?
As I just said, I'm not going to weigh in any further, as we often do, and as the practice. We're not going to get deeper into personnel matters. We've put out a statement. The president likes Omarosa, thanked her for her service, and again, she'll be here later this afternoon. So. She's resigned from her position, but there's really nothing else to add on that front.
Why is she still on the payroll for another month? Is that normal?
Look, there's a lot of different protocols that take place in the government. That's part of the process. If you want to reach out to HR, they might be able to walk you through that in a more detailed way. Certainly not that I'm privy to. Thankfully, I haven't been through the process myself, so I can't speak to it from firsthand.
On a separate matter, on the tax plan, if I could just ask, would the president ask the House and Senate to stay here in Washington and finish this bill, even if it means bleeding into the Christmas holiday?
We're pretty confident that we're going to get there before then, but this is something that I think that both the House, the Senate, and the President are all committed to seeing happen, and we're very hopeful that it will take place at the first of next week. Jeff?
Sarah, does the President have any thoughts about the Disney deal to buy 21st Century Fox?
I know that the president spoke with Rupert Murdoch earlier today, congratulated him on the deal, and thinks that, to use one of the president's favorite words, that this could be a great thing for jobs, and certainly looks forward to and hoping to see a lot more of those created.
What does the President think about the FCC decision on net neutrality? There are a lot of Americans, polls show, who are very opposed to that change.
Look, the Trump administration supports the FCC's effort to roll back burdensome regulations. But as we have always done and will continue to do, we certainly support a free and fair internet. Anything beyond that, I'd refer you to the FCC. Matthew?
Getting back to that Alabama result, has what happened down there changed the president's relationship at all with Steve Bannon, given his big support for Moore, and has it changed the president's thoughts on Mr. Bannon's opposition to other incumbent Republicans?
That's a question you'd have to ask Mr. Bannon. I'm certainly not going to speak for him.
Relationship.
I know that was the second part of the question you asked about whether or not he would support more candidates, and I can't answer that. In terms of their relationship, I haven't spoken with the president directly about the nature of that relationship and whether that has altered it. Francesca?
Sarah, I know that you said that you can't go much further on this personnel matter, but I do want to try to separate out some of the things that we're hearing here and just be crystal clear. So you're saying that Omarosa Manigault was not fired on Tuesday evening, that she didn't get belligerent in her conversation with General Kelly, she wasn't yelling at him, she wasn't cursing at him, and she wasn't escorted off the property. Secret Services said not by them, but she wasn't escorted off the property by someone or some entity other than Secret Service that evening.
Look, as I said, Omarosa resigned from her position. I'm not going to go into a detailed process any further than that. We've put out a statement as is standard practice. We're not going to get into the weeds of a personnel decision here at the White House.
Access to the White House complex?
Morning, Kellyanne Conway said she and other administration officials have been urging Congress to appropriate additional funding for the opioid epidemic. The president declared a public health emergency earlier this fall, but that fund only has $57,000 in it. Economists have predicted that it'll cost upwards of $190 billion over a decade to treat the crisis. Can you tell us how much money that the White House will be urging Congress to appropriate, and what do you have to say to critics who believe that the president hasn't dedicated enough resources to combating the epidemic this year?
Look, one of the reasons that the president has put one of his top people here at the White House, Kellyanne Conway, on this is because he sees this as a priority. He sees this as a major concern, not just for the White House, but certainly for America. There's a number of stories, as you just said, the amount of money that it will take to combat this crisis is huge. We're going to continue looking at the best ways to do that. We're working an interagency process to see what that number looks like. That hasn't been finalized, but we're going to continue looking at every way possible. I don't right now. That's still part of
$45 billion that was part of the Republican healthcare plan.
Look, that's, I think, a start, but to fully address this, we want to make sure that we get it right and make sure that we really address this head on. And that's why the president has made it such a focus and put Kellyanne and others here at the White House to really make an emphasis and make that a priority.
Is that something that you guys will get done, that appropriation, by the end of this year? Can the president promise that?
I'm not aware that we can promise that a full funding for that would take place by the end of this year. This wasn't a problem that happened overnight. We're not going to be able to fix it overnight. But what we want to do is make sure that we address it and that we make it a priority for the administration. And we're going to continue doing that until we beat it. The president's spoken about this several times and making sure that we address it from all fronts and all sides. Kristen.
Thank you. With Omarosa leaving, how many senior staffers here at the White House are African American?
Look, we have a really diverse team across the board at the White House. We always want to continue to grow the diversity here. We're going to continue to do that and continue to work hard. I don't have a number directly in front of me, specifically not African American, but I can say, again, we have a very diverse team at the White House, certainly a very diverse team in the press office, and something that we strive for every day is to add and grow to be more diverse and more representative of the country at large, and we're going to continue to do that.
She was really tasked with reaching out to the African American community. Who have you identified who is going to take that role, and how critical is it to this president, to this administration, to make sure that that role is in fact filled?
Yeah, I think there are a number of people that will be part of that process and have been part of that process that will continue to be. This wasn't something that was a singular effort by any one individual. You have a member on the cabinet, Ben Carson, I know has been engaged and talked with the president on this issue, but it's not just within the White House. The president met with Senator Tim Scott. I know he wants to continue those conversations as well to look at the best ways to do that and to do outreach to that community.
And just to follow up on one of April's questions, what Omarosa said today was, I've seen things that have made me uncomfortable, that have upset me, that have affected me deeply and emotionally, that has affected my community and my people. Were her concerns ever addressed or dealt with?
The comments that she made, that was the first time I'd heard those. Whether she raised them with other individuals, I'm not aware. I know she regularly brought up specific issues where they were talked about in meetings, and we addressed them at the time.
Any of the issues where any of her concerns were?
I don't. That's a question that you would have to ask her, and I'm certainly not going to speak on her behalf in that regard. But I do know that it's something that we take seriously and something that we want to see improve, I think, across all fronts. So, right here, Margaret.
Sarah, today is the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre in which so many children were killed. That, of course, as a tragedy, was eclipsed by what happened in Las Vegas, which is now the most tragic and mass shooting on U.S. soil. Since that time, what has President Trump done to try to protect the American people against a similar type of massacre? Does he think anything's been done? What is the administration trying to do? Is there anything at the executive level that he thinks needs to be undertaken?
Look, I think that there are a number of different ways that we look to protect our citizens every single day. One of the areas that the president has been outspoken about, not necessarily to those two instances, but just more broadly speaking in terms of national security and protecting individuals, certainly through border security, stronger vetting processes, and looking at whether or not there are other regulations that we could put in place that would offer protection.
These weren't people who entered the United States.
Right, and I said I'm speaking more broadly in terms of national security as a whole. And look, this is a president who knows that his number one responsibility is to look for ways to protect American citizens, and we try to do that every single day. And whether or not there's a regulation that could be put in place or not that could have prevented those things, frankly, I'm not aware of what that would be, but we want to look for every opportunity, every way possible that we can to protect American lives, and we're going to continue doing that.
Is it correct to say that the administration is looking at how to prevent these kind of mass shootings by domestic shooters on U.S. soil?
I know that. I know that's something that absolutely. I know that's something that the Department of Homeland Security looks at and talks about and works on every single day. I don't think there's a person in this country that wouldn't like us to find ways to protect people, and we're certainly very supportive of that. And that's something that would be
that the president has highlighted that says he wants to.
I don't think there's any one thing that you could do that could have prevented either one of those instances, those horrible tragedies.
These work restrictions given very quickly just the other day for this failed terrorist attack, which is why in these cases, I mean, this is the worst shooting on U.S. soil on President
I understand
Trump's
that,
watch,
and that's why I also think that you have to take these matters obviously very seriously. But if you could name a single thing that would have prevented both of these, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know what that would look like. But we're looking every single day at how you can protect American lives, how we can best protect American citizens. In terms of New York, we know for a fact this individual came through a chain migration system. This is something the president has been outspokenly against and something that he wants to stop. And that individual wouldn't have been here in order to commit that crime if that wasn't in place. So that's a fact that we do know.
So weapons ban, any kind of regulation, any kind of mental health concerns, the president has specifically mentioned that as a possibility.
I know that they're looking at some of the mental health issues. It's something the president has raised before, but in terms of a specific policy that we're moving forward with that would have prevented that, I'm not aware of what that would be yet. Trey?
Thanks, Sarah. Has the president expressed any concerns regarding the FCC's decision today to roll back these Obama-era regulations on net neutrality? And then moving forward, are there any assurances that the White House can offer to the American people who are concerned that the decision and vote today will lead to a less free internet?
As I said a few minutes ago, the administration supports the FCC's efforts, and at the same time, the White House certainly has and always will support a free and fair internet. We'll take one last question for the day. Brian.
I'm going to ask a question about taxes. The Federal Reserve yesterday said that the tax bill would provide a modest lift to the economy. That's in stark contrast to words that the president has used, like rocket fuel to the economy. What is the data the president is basing his rosier picture of the impact on the economy of the tax bill versus the experts at the Federal Reserve?
Look, there are several individuals I would point you to. Kevin Hassett, who has spoken in this room and on a number of networks that I see represented here, that has repeatedly stated that a lot of the statistics, a lot of the data shows that this will be a huge boost to the economy. It will bring companies back. It will grow our jobs, push the stock market higher. I think that those are all places I would point back to. And certainly I think there's great support that we have seen just based on the idea that this passes, that you're seeing the stock market increase, and I think a lot of that is tied to that. So
That the word modest was used?
I haven't asked him about that. I think upset's maybe not the right word. He might think that the other opinions that have been offered are a little more accurate. So
the Treasury analysis used
the president.
two
Hold on just a
things on
second, because I know that the call time is here momentarily, and the president will be speaking here in a few minutes. Just want to say thanks. Have a good week, and April, I'm looking forward to having some pie with you here momentarily. Thanks, guys.
Can we get him out here? Can we get the president out here to be speaking with Senator Rubio today?
All right, guys, so we'll bring it back into the studio for now. That was Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the White House press briefing. She mentioned that President Trump is going to be speaking. He's talking about deregulation from the White House, and I believe we'll be taking that to our Facebook page. If you're interested in that, jump on to Fox 5 DC on Facebook. But hey, thanks so much, guys, for hanging out on the stream and offering your thoughts and your comments. I see that you've been chatting a little bit about the FCC and net neutrality. Over back to the Vegas shooting, of course, as they mentioned, Sandy Hook. It is the 5-year anniversary. We don't want to forget that. I actually have a little graphic that we're going to put up to end the show, remembering the 20 children and 6 staff members / teachers who were killed in that 2012 incident at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. Can't believe it's been 5 years, but I definitely remember where I was when that happened. I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. So really a somber day with that, but also a very political day. I know we were on the Hill for most of the day following the FCC's vote, but it is sort of the big news of the day and definitely what we had in live. So glad that you guys were able to catch that live, as it's part of our lives now. It's technology, it's history, and we'll see what becomes of that. So thanks for offering your comment on that and engaging with us on the chat. Like I said, tomorrow we have a very special show. It's a little bit different. We're going to be showing our partnership with the Make-A-Wish Foundation Mid-Atlantic and following one child whose wish we are looking to grant for the day. And I don't want to give too much away because it's a special show and it's going to have a special ending. So we'll kind of have a bunch of guests in here, and we'll have more talk and video for you, and just interesting. It's going to be unlike one of our normal sort of live breaking news shows. But I do encourage you to jump on. It's going to be fun, and I'll be here to chat with some of our guests and engage with you guys as well. So please do come on as usual. Thank you guys so much for coming in today. We're going to end, I guess, a little bit over our time because we wanted to stay on for the briefing. But that's what we got now. We still have a couple cameras inside the FCC Commission room. Looks like they're on a break for the day, and the White House press briefing has just concluded. So like I mentioned, you can continue to follow us on digital. My handle is right below, and then also Fox 5 DC. That's our normal handle on all platforms. So hope to see you there, and hope to see you tomorrow starting, I think we're going to jump in at like about 10:50 and 11 o'clock start time. So we'll be ready to go at the end of the 10 o'clock hour, and we'll be streaming through to there'll be a break in between, but we'll be streaming through to about 5 p.m. So kind of a special stream for tomorrow. Thanks, Iran. Thanks for all your comments, guys, and your encouragement. And thanks for being great chatters on our live stream. We appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow.